My name is Olivia, and I'm 40 years old. I've been married to my husband, Michael, who is the same age, for 10 years. We used to work in the same department, but now we're in different branches. Michael is a responsible man who is admired by his coworkers. He likes to show off a bit and doesn't want to show his weaknesses. He's very confident, ambitious, and good at his job. His bosses like him, and they expect him to get promoted soon. On the other hand, I'm more low-key and don't stand out much. Given our different personalities, I was surprised when Michael showed a lot of interest in me. After dating for 2 years, he proposed with a big bouquet of roses. I had never been loved like that before, so I said yes immediately. I was excited about the happy life I thought was waiting for me. However, things didn't go as I imagined. I had to live with my in-laws. I wasn't expecting this and wanted to refuse, but Michael insisted. He said, "My parents are good people, so it will be fine," and explained how much they were looking forward to me living with them. I couldn't say no, so for the last 10 years, I've lived with my in-laws in Michael's family home. Life there was far from what I had expected when I first got married. "Olivia, you forgot to clean the front door again, didn't you?" My mother-in-law's nagging started just as I finished making breakfast. "This happens every day." "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't just apologize, go clean it now if you understand," she replied. Even though I have to go to work, I'm treated like a servant every morning. Since living with my in-laws, I've had to wake up at 5 a.m. to make breakfast and clean the house. My mother-in-law, who is a housewife and stays home, doesn't do any housework herself. I hurry to finish my chores before work, and when I get home, I immediately start making dinner. By the time I go to bed, I'm so tired that I fall asleep right away. This has been my routine for years, and I often feel sick from exhaustion. I'm sure it's because of all the stress. I don't want the neighbors to think you're being lazy, so make sure you clean properly, my mother-in-law says, while she relaxes in the living room, eating the breakfast I made. "You're going to be late for work if you don't hurry," she adds. Even though he sees all of this, my husband never stands up for me. My father-in-law just hides behind his newspaper and pretends not to notice. Since living with my husband's family, I've been treated terribly. The stress has made me lose a lot of weight, and I look unhealthy. "You're too skinny and unattractive, that's why you can't have children," my mother-in-law says. I suddenly lost a lot of weight, and my period stopped, making it impossible for me to have a child. Even though all of this was caused by my mother-in-law's stress, she kept blaming me. Before I got married, I used to take good care of my health and appearance, but now, there's barely any sign of that left. I feel depressed all the time because of the constant harassment from my mother-in-law, and when I see my changed appearance in the mirror, it shocks me. I've become completely submissive to her, and I've grown so apathetic that I don't even want to leave the house anymore. Then, I received terrible news. My father had suddenly passed away in an accident. I hadn't visited my family in a long time because whenever I mentioned going, my husband and mother-in-law would scold me. After hearing about my father's death, I deeply regretted not spending more time with him. My family home is only about an hour's drive from my in-laws' place, so I asked my husband and mother-in-law to attend my father's funeral. "There's going to be a funeral for my father," I began, but they cut me off before I could finish. "We're not going. Just let your family handle it," they said coldly. I was shocked by how heartless they were, holding back tears of grief and anger. All I could reply was, "Understood." At my father's funeral, many people gathered. He was self-employed and had many connections, and everyone there was crying, showing how much he was loved. "Olivia, it's been a while, but what happened to you? You've lost so much weight," my mother said, shocked by how tired and worn out I looked. "Oh, it's nothing," I tried to brush it off. "You're not sick, are you? I can't bear to lose you too," she said, starting to cry, still emotional from my father's death. "I'm not sick, don't worry," I reassured her and took a break in the waiting room, but her question lingered. "If you're not sick, then what's wrong?" I thought about my interactions with my husband and mother-in-law. When I told them my father had died, they didn't say a single comforting word. As I thought about it, anger welled up inside me, and I decided to tell my mother the truth. "Actually, I've been dealing with what you could call bullying from my mother-in-law. It's been wearing me out," I confessed, looking down. My mother peered into my face, concerned. "I'm relieved you're not sick, but this doesn't make me feel any better. Is that why you haven't been coming to see me?" "Yeah," I nodded, feeling ashamed. Then, my mother handed me a piece of paper. Take a look at this and think carefully about what to do next, she said. When I looked at it, I realized it was my father's will. My father, being a careful man, had left a will just in case something happened. It also mentioned inheritance. Inherit $2 million? I said in disbelief. That's what it says. You can decide how to use it. I was stunned by the large amount. At the same time, I began to feel hopeful. Maybe with this money, I could finally end this miserable life with my in-laws. With the inheritance my father left me, I could finally build my own house and move out of my in-laws' home. Things seemed to be looking up. After returning to my in-laws' house, I went back to doing the chores like always. On days when I had plans, the house was messier than usual, but that was normal since no one else ever helped clean. While working, I thought about the $2 million I had inherited. Even though I didn't get along with my mother-in-law, I still wanted to stay with my husband, Michael. I decided to have an honest conversation with him about the inheritance and suggest we move out. There's something I want to talk about, I said after Michael's parents went to bed. We were finally alone. Talk about what? Michael asked. About my father. I've received an inheritance, I began. Oh? How much? He asked curiously. It's $2 million, I said, and Michael was shocked. Wait, what? $2 million? Michael couldn't hide his excitement. Yeah, $2 million, I confirmed. Michael was thrilled and said, That's incredible. He left you that much? I was about to discuss using the money to build a house, but before I could say anything, Michael interrupted with something shocking. We need to transfer that money to my mom's bank account right away, he said. I didn't understand what he meant. It sounded so absurd, I thought he was joking. No, why? The money is mine. That doesn't make sense, I said, laughing nervously. But Michael suddenly slammed the table, angry. What are you talking about? A wife's money belongs to her mother-in-law. He wasn't joking, he was serious, and I started to feel scared. I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you're saying, I said, confused. All I wanted was to suggest we build a house together, but Michael didn't let me speak. Instead, he kept insisting the money should go to his mother. I couldn't sleep that night, still in shock. The next morning, while I was making breakfast, Michael and my mother-in-law came to me with angry expressions. Olivia, I heard about the $2 million inheritance. You said you won't give it to me? Who do you think you are? My mother-in-law demanded. But I'm the one who inherited it, I tried to explain. Stop arguing and transfer it to my parents' account now. A daughter-in-law's money is our money, Michael insisted. They were determined to take the inheritance, no matter how much I refused. They kept blaming me, and I realized my resistance was useless. Michael then showed me a piece of paper. You're getting carried away because of this money. I'm the one who's been supporting you. If you don't change your attitude, it's divorce. The paper was a divorce form, already signed by Michael. He handed it to me and said, Take this and go back to your parents' house. If you apologize properly, I might reconsider. I stared at the divorce form, feeling shocked. Memories of the past came rushing back. I had never been financially supported in this house. In fact, I had been paying the same amount for living expenses as Michael, and all the household chores were my responsibility. I hadn't received any help or care from my in-laws, even though I had always tried my best. In the end, they were trying to steal the money my father left for me. If I stayed, I might have felt pressured to give them the inheritance. But I knew this money was meant for me, and being told to leave, I saw it as a chance. Holding the divorce papers that Michael had already signed, I realized that my future was now in my hands. I resolved to never give up my father's inheritance. I made my decision. That day, after finishing work, I returned to my parents' home. I'm home, I said, feeling relieved. Welcome back. I had a feeling you'd be back soon, my mother greeted me with a warm smile. Despite my exhaustion, she had prepared a meal for me. I couldn't remember the last time I ate food made by someone else. As I took a bite of her warm cooking, tears welled up in my eyes, it was so delicious. Did you tell your husband about the inheritance? My mother asked. Yes, and it caused a lot of trouble, I replied. I told her everything about what my husband and mother-in-law had said. My mother was shocked by their behavior. The inheritance is yours, and you should decide your future, she said softly, comforting me as I cried. After staying at my parents' house for a week, I decided to return to my in-laws' home. Well, I'm off, I said. Take care, my mother said. I wasn't afraid to go back anymore. I felt stronger and more determined. When I arrived, my husband and mother-in-law were waiting for me with their arms crossed. You're finally back. Have you reflected on your behavior? They asked. Yes, I apologize. Please let me live here again, I said, giving a superficial apology. My mother-in-law grinned. Well then, hand over the inheritance, she demanded. Actually, the inheritance process is taking a while. I haven't received it yet. It's complicated, so it might take another 6 months or so, I explained. Does it really take that long? Well, fine, they said, satisfied, thinking I would give them the money eventually. However, they continued to nag me about leaving for a week. The house is a mess, because you're not doing your duties as a wife. Clean it up quickly, they ordered. The house was filthy after just 1 week, almost impressively so, but unlike before, it didn't bother me. I simply did the housework as ordered, without feeling upset. No matter how much my mother-in-law bullied me or how dirty the house was, it didn't affect me anymore. I decided to go to the police with the recordings of the harassment. Harassment from an ex-husband is not uncommon, and the police said they would issue a warning before things got worse. Thankfully, they acted quickly and went to warn my ex-husband's family. Since my ex-in-laws cared so much about their public image, just having the police show up was a big deal. To make matters worse for them, a subordinate of my ex-husband who lived nearby saw the police come by, and rumors started to spread. My ex-husband was well known in his company, so when these rumors began, they spread quickly. His colleagues and subordinates, especially those who didn't like him, began sharing bad stories about him. Soon enough, the rumors reached the department where I worked. Did you hear the police were at his place? Someone asked me. I'm divorced now, so I don't know much about him anymore, I replied loudly, making sure others could hear. I was fed up with the abusive language from my mother-in-law and my husband. This only fueled the gossip further, and it didn't take long for the rumor to reach my ex-husband's boss. His boss, fed up with the bad reputation my ex-husband was creating, said, "You've been getting a lot of bad rumors, and I hate men who don't take care of their wives. Plus, this is bad for our company's image, so I'm transferring you." The transfer was harsh. My ex-husband was sent to a small branch in the worst-performing region, far away from the city. It was a place with no entertainment, a remote area some would call a landlocked island. This transfer meant that everything my ex-husband had worked for was ruined, and his chances of promotion were gone. He had no choice but to move. As for my ex-mother-in-law, she was likely shocked by her son's ruined reputation and could no longer live with him. She became reclusive, eventually developing depression, and there were even suspicions of dementia. She started causing problems at home, and my ex-father-in-law was left to take care of her. Even though I wasn't related to them by blood, I had been treated as family, and what happened to them was simply karma for the way they mistreated me. Now, I'm living happily with my mother, and we've even started gardening in our large yard. If I had stayed in that toxic home, I never would have discovered this new hobby, which has brought me so much joy. With my new, peaceful life, my health has improved, and I feel alive again. I'm so happy to have cut ties with my former in-laws.
Mickey got into an accident and got hurt. We're heading to the hospital in an ambulance right now.
Vincent, my husband, called me suddenly, his voice frantic. He was supposed to be at work at this time.
What? Is it true that he got hurt in an accident? Yes, it's true. He had a bike accident. Mickey keeps mumbling, "Come quick, Mom," over and over.
My daughter, Michelle, was in the middle of summer vacation and had gone out on her bike to play with friends after having lunch.
What? No way, Michelle. Michelle? Wait. Oh.
The moment I mentioned Michelle's name, Vincent's previously agitated voice suddenly stopped. Then, unnaturally calm, he said, "Forget what I just said. Bye." And hung up without waiting for a reply. I was worried about Vincent's strange behavior, but more than that, I could only think about Michelle, who was supposedly hurt. I rushed out the door without even changing clothes. At that moment, I collided head-on with someone coming towards me from outside. Ouch! Mom, if you rush like that, you'll cause an accident. Good thing I was wearing my helmet. There stood Michelle, looking exactly as she did before she left. My name is Amelia Ingram, a 42-year-old working mother. After becoming a professional, I started to feel a bit out of shape, so I joined a tennis club for working adults, where I later met my husband, Vincent. I can't remember who spoke first, but before we knew it, we were dating. 1 year after we met.
Will you marry me? Yes, of course.
His pure, almost boyish confession of love with his star-like shining eyes completely won my heart. Nearly a year after our marriage, I gave birth to our first daughter, Michelle.
Look, Mickey, Dad's home.
Vincent was so doting on Michelle that it almost made me roll my eyes. Watching him, I felt warm inside, reassured that marrying him was the right decision. When Michelle entered kindergarten, her friendly nature quickly earned her friends, and she would tell us every day about what happened there.
That girl is Michaela. She's very kind.
That's wonderful. I hope you two become even closer.
Michaela, huh? So she's Mickey too?
Vincent said, laughing with a sense of affinity.
Stop it. If you keep calling them both that, you'll get confused and embarrass yourself.
That would be funny if it happened. Vincent laughed heartily. Since our children were close friends, we quickly became friendly with Michaela's parents.
Thank you for always looking after our Michaela. Let's keep being friends.
Michaela's parents, the Stewarts, were both cheerful and easygoing. After about half a year, we frequently visited each other's homes and enjoyed barbecues together during holidays. Michaela's mom, Hilda, had been in the tennis club in school and had even competed at the national level. Hilda had been curious ever since she heard Vincent's name.
I thought the name sounded familiar. I always admired you. Meeting Mr. Ingram like this is a miracle.
Hilda's eyes sparkled as she spoke. During my school days, I wasn't involved in sports at all, so I didn't know this, but apparently, Vincent was quite a famous figure in the college tennis community. Vincent, feeling good about being reminded of his past glory.
How about this weekend?
He said, mimicking a racket swing. I'd love to see Hilda play tennis. Having completely opened up to Hilda, I said that. Hilda's husband, Hilton, declined because he had to work.
Well, you should go and enjoy yourself.
He encouraged Hilda. Thus, we started inviting her to play tennis every weekend. Hilda, having participated in national tournaments, kept up with Vincent's agile movements, unlike me who was just building my stamina. Unable to keep up with their movements at all, I soon ran out of breath and rested alone on the bench. When Vincent won with a powerful smash.
That's our Vincent. Fantastic.
Hilda ran over and pressed a chilled drink from the cooler box to Vincent's cheek. Vincent let out a surprised cold, and Hilda laughed amusedly. An elderly couple passing by on their walk commented,
Look at that. What a lovely couple.
Yes, it reminds me of our younger days. They looked at Vincent and Hilda, reminiscing about their youth. Now that it was mentioned, Vincent and Hilda could indeed be mistaken for a married couple by strangers. Thinking this, I felt a bit gloomy. Whether he knew my feelings or not, Vincent started going out to play tennis with Hilda whenever they could find time, even without me. Did you go out with Hilda again? At least you could have invited me. Seeing Vincent's tennis bag after he came home sweating, I realized they had gone out together again. I thought you might be tired from housework and your part-time job. I was trying to be considerate. I tried to believe this was his way of being kind. Soon, Vincent and Hilda not only played tennis but also often went shopping together and took turns picking up the kids from kindergarten.
Don't you think you're going out with Hilda too much lately?
When I confronted Vincent, he showed me a small package containing jewelry.
I was planning to give this to you on your birthday. I asked Hilda for advice on what would make you happy.
He smiled innocently. Before we got married, Vincent often came up with surprise plans for me. Knowing he still loved me, I felt relieved. In the fall, the preschool performance at our kids' kindergarten took place.
It's Mickey's first performance. We need to capture every moment.
Vincent took a day off, and for the first time in a while, we went to the kindergarten together. At the Stewart family's, Hilton showed up briefly and then tried to leave quickly. Is it work?
That must be tough,
I casually remarked, to which Hilton, looking uneasy.
Well, yes, kind of.
He replied ambiguously and left in a hurry.
Sorry about that. He's been having a hard time at work lately and is always in a bad mood.
She apologized on his behalf. The preschool performance ended without incident, but from around this time, Hilton started avoiding interactions with us.
We seem to be getting avoided by Hilton.
I expressed my concern.
You're overthinking it.
He's probably just swamped with work, she said with a wry smile. Hilton, who used to be so friendly, had suddenly become distant, and I felt a bit lonely, but she didn't seem to mind. We continued to interact with the Stewart family, and when Michelle started elementary school, she suddenly wanted a bicycle.
Michaela is getting one too.
Michelle pleaded persistently, tugging on my apron, and Vincent, who was listening,
You should just get her a bike,
folded his newspaper and said,
Really?
You usually say not to give in to the kids' wants so easily.
Well, it's inconvenient for her not to have one to go out with her friends. I'll buy her one.
If you say so. I was a bit surprised, but decided to trust Vincent's kindness towards Michelle. So on Sunday, Vincent and Michelle went to Walmart to buy a bicycle. When they returned, Michelle was wearing a brand new pink helmet and kept looking at herself in the mirror.
Mom, I got the same one as Michaela. Her mom said this one suited me.
Was Hilda there too?
Well, yes, I guess so.
Vincent nodded awkwardly. By the time Michelle was in second grade, it became routine for her and Michaela to go out on their bikes.
Do your homework first. I will when I get back.
That was our daily parent-child conversation. When summer vacation started, we couldn't go anywhere due to Vincent's work, but
at least I can play with Michaela a lot.
Michelle was happy, so it wasn't a problem. After lunch, Michelle would ride her bike without doing any summer homework. One evening, I received an urgent call from Vincent.
Mickey's been in an accident and injured. She's in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. What? An accident? Is it true? Yes, it's true. She crashed while riding her bike. Mickey is delirious in the ambulance, repeating "Come quickly, Mom" over and over. No way, Michelle. Michelle? Wait, oh.
Vincent's voice, which had been full of urgency, suddenly fell silent. Then, unnaturally calm, he said, "Forget what I said. Goodbye." And hung up abruptly without waiting for my response. Vincent's behavior bothered me, but all I could think about was Michelle's injury. I rushed out the door without even changing my clothes. At that moment, I collided headfirst with someone running towards me.
Ouch. Mom, if you rush like that, you'll get into an accident.
Good thing I'm wearing a helmet. There was Michelle, looking just the same as before she left.
Michelle, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere?
I asked rapidly while checking her all over, as she had fallen and hit her bottom. Michelle frowned, looking ticklish. I'm fine. What about you, Mom? Did you get hurt? She was worried about me instead.
Vincent called and said you had a bike accident. What? I don't know anything about that.
She looked back at me with innocent eyes, clearly unaware of the situation, her surprise evident.
We're heading to the hospital by ambulance now. I just got a call from Dad.
That's a lie. I'm fine. I'm not hurt at all, see? Michelle brushed the sand off her pants and spun around to show she was uninjured. Indeed, Michelle's body showed no signs of injury. Was it a mistake, and had I just been dreaming? But when I checked my phone's call history, I saw that Vincent had definitely called me 10 minutes ago. I remembered he had said something strange before hanging up, just forget about it. I called Vincent back, and after a few rings, he answered with a heavy voice, yes. Vincent, Michelle is safe. She just got home and doesn't seem hurt at all. What was that call about?
It was nothing. Just forget it.
Vincent tried to laugh it off. But in the background, I could hear many people bustling around.
Check for any brain abnormalities. Hurry!
Yes, doctor. It was clearly a tense situation. Is it really nothing? Because I hear.
It's just TV. Our company has a trend of watching medical dramas while working. We're busy here. I'll hang up now.
Vincent hung up before I could say anything. Too busy to take a call, but with time to watch TV dramas? I tried calling back several times, but Vincent had turned off his phone. It got completely dark, and as I was thinking about reheating the soup for dinner, Vincent called. Sorry, I won't be able to come home tonight. Work isn't finished. I see. I nodded and hung up, then reheated the soup. The next day, Michelle came home from her rabbit care duty at school with a gloomy expression. Usually, she'd go out to ride her bike immediately. Today at school, the teacher told me. Michelle said that Michaela had a bike accident and was taken to the hospital. However, the teacher didn't know any details about her injuries. A bike accident yesterday. Vincent's strange phone call came back to my mind. There was no way it was unrelated to that call. I said goodbye to Michaela yesterday. It happened after that. Recalling the previous day, Michelle started crying. I want to visit Michaela in the hospital. Since Michelle wanted to visit, I quickly got ready and we headed to the hospital where Michaela was admitted. Michelle. You came. Michaela looked surprisingly well, which made me sigh in relief. Her mother, Hilda, was sitting next to her bed.
Amelia, Michelle. Thank you for coming.
But Hilda quickly looked away from me for some reason. I was so shocked when I heard she was rushed to the hospital after a bike accident. According to Hilda, Michaela had a slight fracture in her arm, and she wouldn't be in the hospital for long. I'm sorry for the trouble Vincent caused. At that moment, I responded. Huh? Why was Vincent's name mentioned here? Sure, the day before, I got a strange call from Vincent about Michelle's bike accident, but Vincent kept saying it was a mistake. Why is Vincent's name coming up? Does he have something to do with the accident? I asked, and this time Hilda looked surprised.
What? Didn't you hear about Michaela's accident from him?
I explained that the information about Michaela's accident came from Michelle's school teacher. Then Hilda looked obviously uncomfortable and muttered,
Oh no!
There was definitely something behind that call, I couldn't help but be convinced. Can you tell me what happened yesterday? I asked calmly, with a smile. Hilda stammered, unable to give a proper answer. Well, Michelle's mom. Ignoring the adult tension, Michaela began talking about the accident. According to Michaela, she got into the accident right after parting ways with Michelle. Michaela saw Hilda and Vincent holding hands from a distance and tried to call out to them.
Whoa! Michaela! Stop it!
Hilda tried to interrupt Michaela's testimony in a panic. Go on. I'd like to hear more from Michaela. Michaela smiled cutely and said, okay, and continued. Just as she was about to call out to them, she unfortunately collided with a truck coming out from a side road. The truck had slowed down, but Michaela's light body and bicycle were easily thrown off. Fortunately, she landed on soft soil instead of concrete, and since she was wearing a helmet, she avoided serious injury. Hilda and Vincent were too far away to notice her accident. Later, Hilda turned a corner and disappeared from sight after parting ways with Vincent. Vincent, who came towards Michaela, finally noticed the accident.
Michelle's dad stayed with me at the hospital.
Michaela recalled happily. That's good. I glanced at Hilda, who still had her head down and wouldn't look up. What's wrong, Hilda? You don't look well. Nothing. Hilda replied, her lips trembling. I should get going to prepare dinner, so I'll be leaving now.
Michelle, see you.
Bye, Michaela. Michaela kept smiling, but Hilda remained silent until Michelle and I left the hospital room. Michaela's mom didn't seem well. She's probably sleep-deprived from taking care of Michaela. I brushed off the question and gently patted Michelle's head. When we got home, Vincent was already there.
You're home early today?
Yeah. It seems that Hilda has already reported on the interactions in the hospital room that day. He seemed unsettled, like he was trying hard to think of something to say.
I visited Michaela in the hospital today.
Really? How is she doing?
Oh. I never mentioned that Michaela was in the hospital because of an accident. She could be sick, you know.
Yeah, just had a feeling. Vincent was clearly agitated. Well, all right. I reported on Michaela's injury. But more importantly, it seems like you know something, doesn't it?
I don't know. What could you possibly mean?
I pressed him about the phone call from the previous day. That was just a joke. I just wanted to surprise you. But I never imagined Michaela would actually end up in the hospital the same day. It's a lesson not to joke about such things. Now, shower time. I was so busy yesterday that I didn't even have time to take a shower. Vincent said all he could and then quickly disappeared into the shower room, almost as if to escape. I could hear him humming to the sound of the water running in the shower. All right, now's my chance. I picked up Vincent's mobile phone from the table and opened the messaging app. If my suspicions were correct, there should be some kind of clue. Vincent should be in frequent contact with Hilda, but there wasn't a single message between them in the usual messaging app. Finding this strange, I decided to check his free email app just in case. The app was locked, but I remembered something Michelle had told me before.
Michaela's mom's birthday is just one day apart from Grandpa's.
I tried entering my dad's birthday, shifted by one day, and the lock was easily bypassed. There were numerous exchanges with Hilda. Did he think using a free email address would prevent him from getting caught? The emails were filled with love words so passionate that I blushed just reading them. I heard the shower stop and quickly put his mobile phone back in its original place. Vincent came out of the bathroom, still humming, and checked his phone for any new emails.
Are you expecting an email from someone?
No, it's just work. Vincent instinctively tried to hide his phone behind his back, unaware that it was already too late. For the next few days, we didn't mention Michaela's accident at all. We continued with light greetings and everyday conversations, so on the surface, we might have seemed like a normal couple. However, I hadn't forgiven Vincent and Hilda's relationship. In fact, my true feelings were quite the opposite. I wanted to sever ties with Vincent and leave this house as soon as possible. The only reason I maintained this facade was for Michelle's sake. Michelle, with her sharp intuition even as a child, had sensed something was wrong when I discovered the affair between Vincent and Hilda. "What's wrong, Mom? Are you feeling unwell?" she asked with concern. I didn't want to burden my kind-hearted Michelle with this, but I knew I would have to deal with it eventually. With a determined heart, I invited the Stewarts over to our house. "This is my one and only chance," I said to myself, trying to muster the courage every time I felt like running away while looking in the mirror. On that day, both Vincent and Hilda's husband, Hilton, had the day off from work. I didn't want Michelle to overhear such an adult conversation, but fortunately, she had rabbit care duty that day. According to Hilton, Michaela's injury had completely healed. She should be able to leave the hospital in 2 or 3 days. That's good to hear. I felt a sense of relief hearing this good news from Hilton. I wanted to finish the conversation before Michelle came home from school, so I got straight to the point. "Hilda, since when have you been in a relationship with Vincent?"
Whoa, what are you talking about all of a sudden?
That's right, Amelia. There's no way Vincent and I are involved in that way. Both Vincent and Hilda tried to laugh it off. I swiftly grabbed Vincent's phone from the corner of the table, skillfully opened his emails, and began reading the exchanges between him and Hilda.
This is undeniable proof. Can you explain this? You! When did you? It's incredibly rude to snoop through someone else's phone without permission. Exactly. Even between spouses, looking through each other's phones without permission is a violation of privacy.
Both of them ignored their own actions and solely blamed me.
So, you admit the relationship?
When I said that, they fell silent. No matter what they said, the fact of their affair wouldn't change. They both seemed to realize this. After a while of silence, Hilton, who had been quiet until then, stood up.
There is more evidence.
He scattered dozens of photos on the table from his bag.
What is this?
Hilda panicked and started to collect the photos in a hurry, but I managed to snatch a few from her before she could. The photos showed Vincent and Hilda entering and exiting a hotel. In all the photos, they were wearing different outfits. This meant the photos were taken on different days. They had not met just once, but had been frequently meeting at the hotel.
Have we been followed all this time?
Hilda glared at Hilton with a devilish expression.
I'm busy with work. There's no way.
He calmly denied it. In reality, Hilton had noticed their relationship earlier than I did. He had secretly hired an investigator to look into them without Hilda knowing. Even after the affair became obvious, Hilton couldn't pursue it because the kids were close friends, and in case of divorce, custody usually favored the mother. But Amelia, when you asked me to come with Hilda today, I knew this day had finally come. Hilton realized he couldn't overlook the affair any longer, so he brought the investigator's report and evidence photos with him. Vincent and Hilda, unable to deny it any longer, finally admitted their affair. They had bonded over tennis and started contacting each other even when I wasn't around. Initially, it was just a relationship between parents with kids, without any deeper feelings. However, over time, romantic feelings developed between them. I can't explain it well, but I couldn't get her out of my mind. I feel the same way, Vincent. Their embarrassing statements, without a hint of shame, made me question if they were really parents. Even on the day Michaela had her accident, they were on their way back from the hotel, trying to avoid being seen by acquaintances. Hilda had turned the corner first, unaware of Michaela's presence. She was probably basking in the excitement of spending time with Vincent. When Vincent noticed Michaela reaching out, calling, "Mom, Mom," he hurried over to her. A truck driver was already there, and an ambulance had been called. When the ambulance arrived and they climbed in, Michaela once again said, "Mom, come quickly," so feeling sorry for her, Vincent took out his mobile phone. However, in his agitated state, Vincent mistakenly called me instead of Michaela's mother, Hilda. The moment I said Michelle's name, Vincent realized his mistake. But he couldn't think of a good excuse on the spot, so he abruptly ended the call with, "Forget it." Vincent says he doesn't even remember why he made such a clumsy excuse. He quickly contacted Hilda, and when she arrived at the hospital, Vincent left the room. He was wary that I might hear the news somewhere and visit the hospital. But as he approached home, he couldn't think of a good way to explain it to me, so he stayed in a business hotel that night, citing work as the reason. What's done is done. I've decided. I'm going to marry Hilda. Thank you, Vincent. I'm happy too. I was too stunned to say anything.
Is that truly how you feel?
Hilton asked in a low voice, tinged with anger. Yes, I've made up my mind. Since our affair has been exposed, there's no need to meet in secret anymore, so I'm going to think positively.
Don't think you both can get away with this. If you're serious, we have our plans too.
I exchanged a look with Hilton, and he nodded firmly, understanding my intent.
Yes, I'll fight this with everything I've got. I have a friend from college who's a lawyer. I'll consult with him. Do as you please. Our love won't change.
He brazenly pulled Hilda's shoulder close. I waited for Michelle to return and stayed in a hotel that night. The next day, I took Michelle to my parents' house until the divorce was finalized. At first, Michelle was happy, saying,
"I can play with Grandpa and Grandma."
But when she realized she couldn't see Vincent, she lost her cheerfulness. Later, Vincent and I finalized our divorce. With the help of the lawyer Hilton introduced, I secured alimony and child support from Vincent. At the same time, Hilton and Hilda also finalized their divorce, receiving similar settlements. Even in such a predicament,
I can be with my beloved Hilda. I'll cover the alimony and child support,
he proudly said. Can't I live with Dad anymore? Michelle cried every night, missing his dad. I'm sorry, Michelle. All I could do was hold her close and comfort her. After the divorce, I moved with Michelle into a small apartment, and Hilda moved into Vincent's house. Though they initially rejoiced, thinking they could be together without any worries, Vincent's parents and Hilda's parents didn't approve of their relationship. My usually mild-mannered father-in-law became so enraged that he declared he was cutting ties with him. It was only natural, given that he had betrayed his beloved granddaughter in the worst way. Still, Vincent and Hilda lived without concern for a few weeks, but rumors of their affair quickly spread throughout the town. Wherever they went, they heard voices of contempt directed at them, and eventually, they had to leave town in less than 3 months. I heard that he was feeling quite awkward at work because of the rumors about his affair. However, since they were no longer part of my life, their fate was no concern of mine. I focused more than ever on my part-time jobs to raise Michelle. I had no time to look back on the past. Occasionally, Hilton would come by to check on us, bringing Michaela along.
Here's a souvenir from my recent business trip.
Such fancy tea. Thank you, as always. After the accident, Michaela became afraid to ride a bike and stopped riding altogether. Still, she and Michelle played card games together in the room, just like before.
Kids are much stronger than we adults think.
I've decided to protect her smile no matter what happens.
I feel the same way,
he said with a bright, charming smile. Many years passed, and Michelle and Michaela grew into beautiful young women, fell in love, and got married.
Mom, I'm home.
During summer vacation, Michelle visited my apartment, carrying her newborn daughter. Next to her, Michaela was holding her own baby girl. We ran into each other at the bus terminal. We didn't realize we were on the same Amtrak.
It's incredible how close you two are, getting married and having babies around the same time.
I couldn't help but burst into laughter. The babies in their arms laughed along with me. I'm Emily, and 5 years ago, I got engaged to my college boyfriend, Kevin. We had already introduced each other to our families and even booked the venue for our wedding. I was genuinely looking forward to the wedding and our life together. Then one day, I was suddenly called to a cafe near Kevin's parents' house. He wouldn't say why over the phone, and we had never arranged to meet near his parents' place before, so I was worried something might have happened to them and rushed over. When I arrived at the cafe, I found a woman about my age sitting next to Kevin, someone I didn't recognize. From their demeanor, I had a bad feeling.
Sorry for the wait. What's going on today? And who is this?
I asked, and meet Jessica, an old friend of mine. I've decided to marry Jessica, so I thought I should let you know. Kevin told me. What, Mary? You're supposed to be marrying me, right? What? I panicked at Kevin's shocking announcement. So, I've decided to call off our wedding and marry Jessica instead, said Kevin. Wait, decided to marry? Since when were marriages decided unilaterally like this? What about our wedding? All these thoughts came to me, but I was too confused to say anything.
I've always loved Jessica, actually. But she had a long-term boyfriend, so I settled for marrying you. You had a good job, so there were no worries about life, and you would do the chores and all. I thought you might be a good enough choice for marriage. But then I met Jessica again after a long time, and when I told her about marrying you, she said she'd break up with her boyfriend to marry me. She's willing to break up with her boyfriend for me. Isn't that pure love?
He rambled on excitedly. All this time, Jessica looked at me with a smug expression. Seeing her expression made me feel miserable. But I hadn't done anything wrong. And to think he had felt this way about me all this time, I was just too shocked to comprehend. But here I was, his fiancée, even with the venue booked. I couldn't just walk away without discussing this unbelievable situation.
But we've already booked the venue and paid for it. Can't we talk about this over again?
I had more to say, but I was too shocked to articulate it well.
Did you not listen to anything I just said? Jessica and I are in true love. You're asking to reconsider because of the venue money? Do you value money over my happiness? I guess it's good we're reconsidering the marriage. You never loved me. You loved my money. If you truly cared about my happiness, you'd step aside. I'm going to pursue my true love with Jessica. I don't want to see your face ever again. Don't show up in front of me anymore, he said. The money for the ceremony mostly came from my savings. A strangely calm counterargument came to my mind, but I was speechless. What Kevin was saying was just too incomprehensible, and I couldn't do anything at that moment. Next thing I knew, I was crying from the sadness and humiliation. The day after Kevin told me all this, I called his parents. They had been really happy about our wedding, and I wanted to know what they thought.
When I told them what happened yesterday over the phone, Kevin's parents were shocked. Apparently, Kevin hadn't told them anything. Kevin did what on his own? Emily, I'm truly sorry. We're also unclear about the situation, so we'll check with Kevin and get back to you. Could you give us a little time? Said Kevin's parents. Realizing Kevin's parents weren't like him gave me a bit of solace. Despite what was said, accepting the broken engagement wasn't easy. Kevin was so kind when we were dating, and I loved him for that. Maybe he was misled by Jessica, and what he said wasn't really what he felt. However, that hope was shattered by a call from Kevin's parents. A few days later, I received a call from Kevin's parents. I was ambivalent about wanting to hear the answer, but I picked up the phone. Emily, we spoke with Kevin and heard everything he told you. I don't know how to apologize enough. I'm so sorry. Kevin's parents were crying over the phone. It seemed Kevin had shared his harsh words with his parents as well. That was Kevin's true feelings. We're really sorry, but we can't let you marry Kevin in such a state. We'll pay for the venue and compensation, so could you agree to cancel the engagement? They said. I wanted to talk to Kevin one more time, but seeing how his parents were, it seemed impossible. Kevin's parents sincerely apologized. I didn't take the compensation money. I doubted Kevin, who was only temporarily employed, could afford it, and it would end up being his parents who paid. I later found out that when Kevin's parents called me, Kevin and Jessica had already submitted their marriage registration. Kevin's parents kept silent to not hurt me further. Afterwards, I tried to move on but couldn't easily forget and struggled. A few weeks after the engagement was called off, when the wedding dress I had dreamt of ordering arrived at my home, I cried all night. Clearly, Kevin was 100% at fault, but I couldn't stay sane, wondering what I did wrong, how I could have made him choose me, sinking into depression. My private life was a mess, but I somehow kept up with work. Then one day, I was called into my boss's office. Worried that my personal issues had affected my work, I was anxious, but the discussion took an unexpected turn. We're starting a new project overseas, Emily. Would you be interested in working abroad for about 5 years? I've always noticed your work and wanted you to join this new overseas project. I knew about your wedding plans, so I thought the timing might not work. But living abroad might be challenging. It's an opportunity for career advancement. How about giving it a try? It was an unexpected offer for an overseas assignment. I immediately said yes. I didn't want to stay in America where Kevin was, and I was done with marriage. I planned to work hard on my career, earn plenty, and live independently in my old age. Not just for 5 years, but I was ready to stay abroad for longer. As I prepared to start anew overseas, it turned out the place had a significant American presence, and there was quite a bit of interaction among Americans. I didn't want to deal with any questions from Americans, but soon after moving, I was invited to a monthly gathering with a large American presence. I thought I'd attend just once out of courtesy, but I found the gathering surprisingly comfortable. Many older Americans who had come here for work and ended up staying. They provided a comforting space with a good distance, which was healing for my tired heart. 2 years have passed since I moved overseas, and the casual relationships among Americans continued, with me becoming quite close to everyone. Then one day, an elderly American gentleman, Brian, who had been very kind to me, said he wanted to introduce me to a male relative. I appreciated the gesture, but I had to decline, explaining that after my broken engagement, I wasn't considering marriage anymore. However, Brian said, "Don't overthink it. Just see him as a friend of the same age and meet him." How about that? I couldn't say no to that. especially since he seemed concerned about me. On the day of the meeting, waiting at the cafe, a handsome man sat down in front of me.
Emily, nice to meet you. I'm Pierre,
he said in fluent English. I was surprised to meet someone from France, expecting an American because he was related to Brian. And he was incredibly handsome. I regretted coming in my usual attire of a shirt and jeans. Pierre explained he was the stepson of a relative of Brian's wife and had never lived in America but spoke English because he was surrounded by American relatives. Pierre was easy to talk to, but I was so embarrassed by his good looks that I couldn't make eye contact and felt uneasy throughout our first meeting. I thought Pierre must have found it boring and didn't expect to meet again, but to my surprise, he kept inviting me out, and we gradually became closer. 3 years flew by, and when I received my orders to return home, Pierre said he would come with me, and we decided to get married. I was amazed at how much he had become a part of my life, considering my past wounds from Kevin. After returning to America, I was invited to the wedding of my college friend, Nicole. She had been a close friend and we kept in touch while I was abroad, so she knew about Pierre. Nicole insisted that Pierre come too, so we agreed he would join from the reception. At the reception, I sat on a couch waiting for Pierre. Someone suddenly sat next to me. Too close for comfort, I turned to see who it was, and to my disbelief, it was Kevin. I thought it will be all right, but seeing his face brought back the past, and I froze. Without considering my feelings. Emily, I've missed you while you were abroad. Why didn't you contact me? I truly shined when I was with you, feeling like my true self. Now, without you, I'm not really me, you know? Kevin said. He talked non-stop, ignoring my perspective just like when he broke up with me. Remembering those days made me feel sick. Barely managing to reply.
Jessica is there, isn't she?
Kevin got angry and said.
I don't care about her.
Confused and troubled by his behavior, the reception began. And I took the chance to slip away from Kevin. I was worried about Pierre not showing up, but I decided to enjoy catching up with old friends. Though Kevin dampened the mood. I was enjoying the reception when the bingo game started. Everyone got excited as it was quite challenging until the first bingo came. It was Kevin. Despite feeling uneasy, I couldn't spoil the celebratory mood. When called by the host, Kevin went up to the stage. Asked to give a congratulatory speech to the bride and groom, he began with something astonishing.
Congratulations to the bride and groom. Inspired by you two, today I also have someone I want to express my feelings to.
Kevin said. My heart nearly burst, thinking, no way.
Emily, I still love you. Marry me.
Kevin shouted from the stage. At that moment, everything went dark before my eyes. What is he talking about? Has he forgotten what he said to me in the past? And at someone else's wedding, how outrageous. I was about to explode with anger, but then I saw Nicole winking at me. As I stood there confused, the sound of the door opening filled the venue. Everyone's attention turned to the entrance, where Pierre appeared, holding a bouquet of red roses. He came over to me and hugged and kissed me suddenly. The venue erupted in cheers. While I was still bewildered, he said I love you in French and handed me the bouquet. I usually heard him speak English, so why French? But being professed love in front of everyone, I was both thrilled and embarrassed, blushing deeply. Then the bride said,
This time, one of my college friends is also getting married. It's Emily and Pierre. Emily is a dear friend of mine. Let's all celebrate with them today,
she announced.
Having such a handsome boyfriend with a bouquet of roses is amazing. Emily, you had such a wonderful boyfriend.
Congratulations. Everyone congratulated us. I glanced at Kevin, who had been completely forgotten and stood there looking foolishly stunned.
Well, Emily is married now. Kevin's feelings didn't reach her. Thank you for that. Now, let's continue with the bingo game,
said the host as Kevin stepped down from the stage. Though it was a shame for Kevin to be embarrassed in front of everyone, I honestly felt good about it. When I asked Pierre why he did it, it turned out Nicole had planned everything.
Kevin begged me to let him propose to Emily at the reception. I was so angry I thought about refusing, but then I saw it as a chance for revenge. I haven't forgiven Kevin for what he did to Emily,
she explained. The bouquet of roses, the kiss, the confession in French, everything was planned by my best friend. I apologized for ruining the reception with our drama.
What are you talking about? It was the best entertainment,
Nicole said. I heard from friends that Kevin was left by Jessica soon after they got married. Kevin worked at a major corporation on a temporary basis, but Jessica married him thinking he was a permanent employee of a big company, hence wealthy. Once married, she realized the reality of his temporary employment, low salary and no benefits. Plus, rushing into marriage after breaking off his engagement with me led to him being fired due to losing credibility at work. I was tricked, she declared, and they quickly divorced. So he clung to me. Being a full-time employee with a decent salary, I often paid more during our relationship and even covered most of our wedding expenses. Kevin must have missed my money. How trivial. One day, a package arrived at my new home from my parents' house. It contained local sweets and vegetables, but among them was a stack of postcards. At one look, Emily, I love you. I can forgive your mistakes. The stars are beautiful tonight. Are you looking at the same starry sky? Without you, I'm like a vacuum cleaner without a filter. It revealed creepy poems from Kevin like. The postmarks showed these postcards had been sent daily after the wedding. Too creepy. Sending such things to my parents' house was a nuisance. I bundled the postcards and sent them to Kevin's parents, who immediately contacted me. We are truly sorry for still causing you trouble. We'll make sure he never bothers you again, they promised. When I, Melissa, met my husband Daniel, was 30 and working for a foreign-affiliated company. I had been recognized for my achievements and now holding a managerial position. Daniel was also 30, working as a grocery store clerk at the time. When we met, Daniel had a history of divorce and a 1.5-year-old daughter, Kayla. Kayla often fell ill, resulting in frequent calls from the childcare center. As a result, he was forced to resign from his job, a decision made for his child's sake, and subsequently survived on part-time jobs. His ex-wife was alive and well but did not claim custody. She was the type to spend all her money. She said she couldn't be free with a child. I don't know the truth of these stories. Anyway, what started as a regular interaction between a grocery store clerk and a customer somehow led to a deep connection. Including Kayla, we started going out together, and eventually, marriage came up in conversation. I might not earn much, and I've been divorced, but Kayla has grown to be fond of Melissa too. It would be a lie to say that it didn't make me feel good. Indeed, Kayla had grown quite attached to me. I had been afraid marriage would disrupt my career, but I thought having a child already in the picture might not be an issue. Seeing Kayla smiling broadly on my lap made me feel genuinely attached to her. So, by the time Kayla turned 2, we decided to become a family of 3. Though, from the beginning, we might not have been a typical family. Daniel chose not to work full-time for Kayla's sake, and I continued to prioritize my career. Luckily, I earned enough to support us, even with Daniel's part-time income. I appreciated him taking care of the household, and we settled into roles that worked for us. However, I thought that might be the case. We believed it was fine to be a family like this. Kayla might have felt more secure with her biological father during illness, and having no prior parenting experience, taking care of a 2-year-old would have been challenging for me. It might have been unconventional, but it felt right. Things began to change when I was offered an assignment abroad. This assignment was not only my dream but would also significantly benefit my career. Despite the competition, I was given the opportunity, thanks to several recommendations. I was torn, of course. On one hand, I wanted to go. But Kayla was about to enter middle school, a time when she might need a mother figure. Though not her biological mother, we had lived together for 10 years. I wanted her to be happy. Daniel said to me, "Go ahead. We'll be fine here." "But I know you're worried about Kayla. But she's 12 now, not a little girl anymore. She's gotten much stronger recently. You wanted to go, right? Go with peace of mind. We'll be waiting for you in America." With those words from Daniel, my solo assignment abroad was decided. Thankfully, my company was not heartless. They made it easier for me to return to America, allowing me to keep in touch with Kayla and Daniel as much as possible. But soon, Kayla's behavior began to change. She became quite prickly. Maybe she felt abandoned. But she had her real father, right? Was she that attached to me? Looking back, I can't pinpoint when. Perhaps I didn't fully understand what being in a stepfamily meant. I thought we were doing fairly well, but maybe that was my misunderstanding. Confiding my concerns to Daniel only led to responses like, "That's just adolescence. She's embarrassed." Or, "She has her own world now. Please respect that." Eventually,
The fact that you're abroad and can't be relied upon, and that you're not her real mother, is the truth,"
he bluntly stated. Faced with that, I had nothing to say. Kayla, who was only 2 when we married, seemed to have learned the truth about our family when I went abroad. Even though we were supposed to be a family, being informed without any prior consultation was a shock. Yet, I hoped that someday, after puberty passed, she might smile at me like before. "Sorry about those times," she might say with a smile. I endured, thinking so. But Kayla's attitude never waned. Every time she saw me, it was a barrage of insults. Every look she gave me was filled with words like ugly, old hag, and disgusting, the worst possible words she could think of. And Daniel, seeing this, would just laugh and not bother to correct her. Every time I came home, I was greeted with such nasty looks and relentlessly insulted.
"You being here means I can't invite friends over." "Why not? Just invite them. I don't want my friends thinking someone like you is my mom. It's embarrassing. Why do you have to come back?"
Kayla seemed so displeased with my return that she quickly retreated to her room. I hoped things would go back to how they were. But truthfully, I might have been at a loss for a solution, simply overwhelmed. I thought of Kayla as my own child and raised her with love. Yet, with Daniel and Kayla treating me this way, my efforts seemed unrewarded. Without any concern for my troubles, Daniel and Kayla did as they pleased. Indeed, I had said I loved Daniel and would treat Kayla as my own even when marriage was proposed. That feeling was genuine. Maybe that's why Daniel took it for granted that I was smitten with him. He seemed to think he could say anything to me without consequence. Kayla, despite disliking me, seemed to think I would endlessly spend money for her benefit. This attitude from Daniel and Kayla had been a constant source of distress for me. While troubled, I continued to work, and on a day, 5 years later, I suddenly found my answer. That day, there was a significant meeting in America, and I was busy preparing. The main task was preparing the documents, as my boss was supposed to attend the meeting. However, my boss fell ill suddenly, and there were few who could step in. Given I was nearby, understood the situation, and knew the content of the documents, the task fell to me. I rushed to the meeting place and managed to handle the situation smoothly. After completing the handover and reporting, it was time to return directly to my assignment abroad. The company allowed me some consolidated leave, and I decided to return home after a long while. Then, just as I got home, I remembered. I hadn't informed Daniel of my return. It was sudden, and I had been in a rush, so it completely slipped my mind. But then, even if I had informed him, I'd likely have been met with abuse and treated as a nuisance. Thinking the outcome would be the same, I entered my home. As soon as I opened the front door, I heard the sound of laughter. What was that? Is someone visiting? It felt strange, as I hadn't heard such bright laughter from Daniel and Kayla in recent times. I heard a woman's voice from the living room. It was clearly an adult woman's voice, different from Kayla's. I stood frozen, holding my breath. The voice wasn't loud, and I couldn't make out what was being said. Careful not to be discovered, I quietly peeked into the living room. Inside, I saw Daniel, Kayla, and an unfamiliar woman. Huh? Who is that? I was consumed with curiosity about who this unknown woman could be. And Kayla's words soon cleared my doubt.
Mom!
Kayla called the woman Mom repeatedly. And the woman accepted those words with a smile. Kayla's attitude towards her was entirely different from how she treated me, genuinely affectionate. The resemblance between the two suggested a possibility to me. Could it be? My fleeting hope was quickly shattered, revealing an unwelcoming reality.
After all, you caught yourself a top-notch ATM. Exactly. The pay is good, at least. Thanks to that, I can get by with just an easy part-time job. Plus, with her being abroad most of the time, it's perfect.
That's right.
As long as the money keeps coming, that's all that matters.
Laughing together, Daniel and the woman shared this exchange. Kayla's slightly sullen voice then chimed in.
But I want to be with my real mom, not a fake one.
Unfortunately, my suspicions seemed confirmed. The sight of a seemingly happy family in the living room. But it wasn't me there. It was another woman, a stranger to me. The shock was so overwhelming that I found myself unable to think or move for a while. Then, I heard Daniel's voice cut through the silence.
Until Kayla graduates college. Until then, we're strangers, but we'll have to endure, right?
Well, college does cost a lot of money.
This woman was likely Daniel's ex-wife, Kayla's biological mother, Brittany. That's what I thought. However, this is merely speculation, and without any recording, it can hardly be considered evidence. I quietly left the house. I never imagined that such a future awaited me after the meeting had ended. I had been used by those three all along. As I hurried back to the hotel, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I had loved Daniel. And Kayla too. But if they say I'm not her biological mother, that's the end of it. Still, I believe I gave her all the love I could. However, Daniel and Kayla were different. Behind my back, both of them mocked me. The days I spent worrying suddenly seemed utterly foolish. What was my life even about? I thought I had been doing everything for the benefit of Daniel and Kayla, including this overseas assignment. Of course, I wanted to go, but not at the expense of neglecting my family. But perhaps that suited those three just fine. Anger started to bubble up within me. What did they take me for? What Daniel and Kayla needed wasn't me but the money I was earning. At that moment, I vowed to get revenge on that family. Then, I remembered the information about Brittany that Daniel once shared with me. Of course, there's no guarantee Daniel was telling the truth. But it didn't seem like a complete lie either. From the little I saw, Brittany's fashion and belongings were all cheap and flashy, not befitting her age. At least, it seemed true that she was reckless with money. And if she truly was the ex-wife, then I needed evidence. As it stood, it was just speculation based on their conversation. I needed solid proof. But that would explain Daniel and Kayla's behavior towards me. Tears of confusion started to flow. To get to the bottom of this, I hired a detective to investigate Daniel's conduct. A few weeks later, while I was still in my assignment country, I was informed that the investigation had concluded. By then, I had calmed down, and reading the report didn't upset me as much as I thought it might. Apparently, it was true that Brittany was extravagant with money and even had debts. Maybe the divorce was a sham, meant to prevent her debts from affecting Daniel. It seemed that Daniel and Brittany had continued their relationship even after the divorce. Yes, even after he remarried me. The fact that they are biological parent and child means some contact is natural. As for when they crossed the line, it's a thing of the past. The detective informed me in a bitter tone. Either way, it appeared that Daniel and Brittany's relationship had lasted a long time. Brittany loved gambling and alcohol and would spend all her money on them. Daniel married her because she got pregnant and looked after the child because it was his responsibility, nothing more. But is it really good enough just to take care of Kayla? No, it's not. Either way, it wasn't something I should be considering. The fact that Daniel couldn't cut ties with Brittany was Daniel's problem. The investigation also revealed more facts. Although I had been sending Daniel money for living expenses, he had been giving an allowance out of it to Brittany. She used that money to gamble and go drinking. They must have been enjoying their time together without my knowledge. And they were raising Kayla to suit their convenience. Unaware, I had been working from dawn till dusk in a foreign land, believing that someday they would understand me. I felt sick at my own naivety. And so I began my revenge. First, I stopped the remittance of living expenses to Daniel. The next day, he called. Even considering the time difference, it was quick, which made me smirk a bit.
Melissa, what's the meaning of this? You haven't deposited the living expenses. There are payments to be made. Hurry up and send the money.
With that, Daniel tried to hang up. I informed him that I had no intention of sending any more money. Then Daniel raised his voice so loud it almost cracked the speaker.
Just send the money already. I don't have time for this.
Too busy hanging out with Brittany?
What?
Daniel's tone clearly dropped. After a few seconds of flustered silence, he began to stammer out a defense.
What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? There's no way that's happening.
Clearly, Daniel wanted to keep me, his ATM, attached until Kayla graduated from college. He seemed desperately trying to dodge the issue. I didn't let that go.
You think I don't know anything? What are you saying you know?
Though he tried to sound calm, Daniel's voice was shaking.
I've been lied to for over a decade.
The decade part was a guess, but Daniel didn't deny it. That must be the case. Realizing I had caught on to everything, Daniel attempted to sidestep the topic about Brittany.
Look, just send the money, all right? Kayla has her tutoring fees. You really want her to miss out on school? If she can't go to college, how are you planning to take responsibility?
He thought mentioning Kayla would make me comply easily.
Whether Kayla goes to college or not, it's none of my business anymore.
My voice was colder than I expected.
What's gotten into you?
Daniel sensed that evasion was futile. His tone dropped, losing his previous assertiveness.
I've said it before, I'm not interested in taking care of your lives. Go back to Brittany and work it out with her. Kayla wants to be with her real mom, right?
As I said this, arguing voices could be heard over the phone. Then Kayla came on the line, apparently having been arguing with Daniel.
We won't be able to afford tutoring. What are you going to do about it? Ask your real mom. I'm just the fake one, after all.
Kayla started yelling again. Daniel came back on the phone, attempting to calm things down.
Let's talk this over. You'll understand if you listen.
I agreed to this proposal. And on my next return home, I was to have a discussion with Daniel. Upon arriving, Daniel was waiting, seemingly prepared to talk.
Please, just hear me out. There's nothing suspicious going on. I thought it was best for Kayla to sometimes meet her biological mother. That's all there was to it. Nothing more. Really.
Oh, is that so? At this point, the details hardly mattered. But Daniel seemed displeased by my indifferent attitude.
On what basis are you accusing me of cheating? Enough is enough.
I presented him with a copy of the report I had received earlier. Daniel became suspicious. As he flipped through the pages, his face turned pale, and his hands began to tremble.
What is this?
There were photos of Daniel entering lodging facilities with Brittany during the day and bringing her into our home when I was away.
That's you, isn't it? I'm the one who wants you to stop making a fool of me. How far do you intend to take this?
Daniel clutched the report, speechless. After a moment of heightened emotions, I sighed.
Well, I'm a stranger now. Whatever you do is none of my business. I have no obligation to support you. Get back with Brittany and figure it out as a real family.
Then Daniel collapsed to his knees.
We will obviously get a divorce. The rest will be handled through lawyers.
I left him with those words and exited the house. After long struggling with my relationship with Daniel and Kayla, I felt lighter knowing that was behind me. I could now focus solely on myself. I left everything to my lawyer and returned to my assignment abroad. I had instructed the lawyer to demand compensation from Daniel, in addition to the divorce.
Please, let's start over.
Daniel's frantic plea came through, evidently informed by the lawyer. I don't need you. I'm not lacking anything without you.
Don't say that. Let's go back to being a happy family like we used to be.
Daniel's desperate appeals did not sway me.
Don't call me again.
With that, I hung up on Daniel. Later, my lawyer informed me that the divorce had been finalized successfully. The lawyer informed me about the situation of the three afterwards. The house we lived in was originally bought by me before the marriage. As it was a premarital asset, it was naturally in my name. Upon the divorce, I decided to put the house up for sale. As a result, Daniel and Kayla lost their place and had to move to a cheap apartment where Brittany lived. While it's good they returned to their original family, Brittany's extravagant spending hadn't changed, leading to constant fights with Daniel. And of course, the two of them were short on money. The lawyer visited Daniel's part-time job and arranged for a portion of his salary to be deducted and sent to me. Thus, money started to be deposited into my bank account every month. These two had lived as they pleased on my money until now. Given this situation, their separation seemed only a matter of time. Finally, the lawyer handed me a letter. It appeared to be from Kayla upon inspection. I'm sorry for all the mean things I said. My real mom and dad don't have money, so it looks like I can't go to college. Please help me." The message was brief, but unmistakably in Kala's handwriting. However, there was no sign of remorse. She still saw me as nothing more than a convenient ATM. It seemed. In front of the lawyer, I wrote my response to Kayla.
"If you want to go to college, try to get a scholarship and make an effort on your own first. Relying on someone else for an easy life is shameful. I hope this becomes an opportunity for you to change."
I left the letter with the lawyer and returned to my hotel. But then, something unexpected happened. Somehow, Daniel had found out where I was staying and was waiting for me in the lobby entrance. How did he know I was here? A creeping sense of fear spread through me.
"What are you doing here?"
Looking at him, Daniel was in disheveled clothes, seemingly having come here without much thought. "Help me." Daniel, who had only experienced easy part-time jobs, seemed unable to bear the current situation.
"The divorce is final. Just leave."
When I said that firmly, Daniel collapsed to his knees again. The hotel security was watching us. Finally seeming to give up, Daniel left in a dejected manner. I was truly shocked to see Daniel in the lobby. The next day, I changed my accommodations. After everything was settled, I rented a room in a completely different place. And today, I am writing this as I have successfully moved into my new home.
"I'm taking the house, the savings, and the retirement fund. You can go live in a home."
Understood. These were the last words spoken to me by my husband of 35 years on the final day of our marriage. Rather than cherishing the effort I put into raising our children, caring for our parents, and working tirelessly, he chose to cast me aside in the most humiliating way. What was the meaning of my 35 years of dedication? He left all responsibilities to me while he enjoyed nights out. Never once did he express gratitude, as if my efforts were expected. Looking back, I'm amazed at how long I endured this treatment. But now, it's time for me to live my life in my golden years. I thought it was my husband's turn to be miserable. My name is Grace, I'm 60 years old. Working part-time at a food company's factory. My husband's name is Robert, he's 65. We met through a mutual acquaintance. And got married when I was 25. Marking 35 years of marriage. Our relationship began with what was then popular group dating, and after several dates, influenced by our friends, we started dating. As we met more and more, we both started to think that if we were to marry anyone, it would be each other. Getting married felt like a natural progression. Starting our life together, I realized Robert had no savings. In the beginning, we lived in a small apartment, with most living expenses covered by me. Robert's low income made me anxious about our future, so I continued working. Sometimes unable to manage household chores due to overtime. "You're late. I'm hungry already." "Did you wait? You could have eaten first." "How can I eat when there's nothing to eat?" Robert often came home earlier than me, as he rarely worked overtime, yet he never helped with household chores.
"Isn't it a woman's job to do the housework?" We're not in that era anymore.
That time was when women were starting to make significant strides in the workforce. The term career woman was becoming common, but Robert insisted that household duties were a woman's job, as if stuck in an outdated mindset. I would have preferred being a housewife if it were financially feasible.
Balancing work and home life is what defines the modern woman.
Our situation wasn't exactly the stereotype of a henpecked husband, but reflected Robert's tendency to interpret things in a way that suited him. While I was constrained, Robert often went out drinking.
"If you're going to be late, at least let me know." "Quit nagging. It's my time. I can do what I want."
His tone grew even harsher when he came home drunk. While I couldn't freely use my own money or time, Robert enjoyed his. I feel like I'm always getting the short end of the stick. Early in our marriage, I was so frustrated that I considered divorce. But when I confided in my mom, she strongly advised against it. I also worried about societal judgment and lacked the courage to leave. Living together meant acknowledging both the good and the bad, I constantly reminded myself. After my husband Robert received his paycheck, he'd either go out for drinks or just enjoy his freedom. He never considered taking on a side job or working overtime. Instead, he'd leave work on time, choosing between heading out for drinks or coming home. When he did come home and found me not there, he'd complain. I hate coming home to an empty house. Seeing the lights off through the window stresses me out. But sometimes I have to work late. I'd respond, "What's the point of you working overtime? You should find a different job." He'd retort. Robert took it upon himself to call my workplace and suggested they let me go. Whether my boss wanted to avoid getting involved in whatever was happening or had already wanted to fire me, I was encouraged to resign. It became uncomfortable to stay, so I left a job that was hard to get in the first place. Now, I was faced with the daunting task of job hunting again. Having already left 2 companies, my resume wasn't passing the initial screenings. In a panic, why not work part-time? I'm working full-time anyway, Robert casually mentioned. I wasn't particularly career-driven, so I didn't cling to my aspirations. However, I was worried if we could manage on Robert's salary alone. So, I took on 2 part-time jobs. One as an early morning cleaner and another as a supermarket cashier. I'd even work overtime at the supermarket on days I knew Robert would be home late. I made sure to be home when Robert was around and worked diligently when he wasn't. I endured years of this routine, convincing myself that Robert needed me. I found his desire to have me home when he returned somewhat endearing at the time. A year into our marriage, I gave birth to our first son. Our apartment is getting too cramped. Yeah, the kid will want his own room when he's older, and he might even want siblings. Around that time, Robert's mom, Karen, who was a divorced single mother, suggested we live together. Probably, she felt lonely after Robert, her only child, left home.
It's all positives, right? We won't have to pay rent,
Robert said, likely echoing Karen's words. I wanted some time to think it over.
Mom's already getting things ready,
he pressed, revealing that a room for our son was already being prepared, complete with new wallpaper. I was shocked at how far they had progressed with their plans without me. Wanting to continue working part-time, I agreed, albeit a bit lightly. A decision I would soon regret. Karen seemed to have it out for me, delivering daily doses of sarcasm. It's sad for the child to see his mom work so much. I can't believe this. It wasn't like this in my time, she'd say. Karen had never worked. After her divorce, she relied on her parents to raise Robert. Karen's family was somewhat wealthy, so there was money. Now, it seems she's living off a small inheritance and a meager pension. Though her spending habits seemed a bit extravagant. Her kindness extended to her hobbies and her son and grandson, but never to me. Meals were prepared without considering me, and I was often left behind on outings. I was thankful she looked after my grandson, though. With Karen taking over the household, Robert told me,
"You can work full-time now, overtime included."
What? Why all of a sudden?
I asked, baffled. "Since Mom's here, you can go work,"
he said. I thought to myself, what a selfish person he is. It was then I realized that when he said he wanted me to stay home, it wasn't because he wanted me there, but rather someone to take care of his needs. I started my mornings by dropping off our child at the childcare center, then heading to work as a temp. Fortunately, Karen was always willing to pick up our grandson, which allowed me to rely on her for the return trips. Being able to work overtime without complaints was a relief. This routine continued for about 10 years until Karen began to act strangely. "Who are you?" "A thief, I guess." "Robert, call the police." "No, it's me, Grace." Karen had developed Alzheimer's disease and saw me as a complete enemy. She increasingly failed to recognize Robert and our son as well. One day, while wandering, she was involved in a traffic accident and became bedridden. "This is your fault. You're responsible for taking care of her," Robert blamed me. "How is it my fault? You shouldn't be working late nights." "But you're the one who said I could work." Our arguments became endless. I considered leaving with our son, but couldn't abandon Karen. Besides, our son loved both Robert and Karen too much for me to separate them. Karen, who never accepted me as family, complained daily while I cared for her. When I confided in Robert, he dismissed it simply. "She has dementia, what can you do?" Eventually, I quit my job and became increasingly isolated. I had hoped Karen might become kinder to me, thinking I was a stranger due to her condition, but that was wishful thinking. She must have inherently disliked me. Yet, she was still an important grandmother to our son. I cared for Karen alone until she passed away. After Karen's death and our son becoming independent, only Robert and I remained. With Robert's retirement coming up next year, I looked forward to traveling together and exploring new places. However, Robert presented me with something shocking. "Mine's already filled out. Just sign and submit it." "A divorce application?" "It's obvious if you look at it. You're really dumb, you know." That's what's been so annoying. I felt as if I'd been punched. It felt like I might collapse right there.
Why? Did I do something to deserve a divorce?
If I had to say, I don't want to spend the rest of my life with you.
What do you mean?
Robert looked at me with a scornful smile and dropped a bombshell. "I want to marry someone else." And then, there was Robert's mistress. It seems their affair had been going on for years. The mistress was 20 years younger than me.
"Even when I was taking care of Mom and raising our child, you were cheating?"
That's about right. The anger inside me was about to explode. While I endured Karen's harsh words, took care of our child, and suffered loneliness all by myself, Robert was out having fun with his mistress. I wish I never knew this.
"You've been deceiving me all along. I'll never forgive you."
"And what are you going to do about it?" "Like you could do anything." Robert taunted me with a smirk. "So, you're divorcing me to be with her?" "That's right. She's much younger than you." "Understood. I'll sign the divorce papers. But just so you know, I'll be seeking compensation from both of you." "Fine by me. I'll pay whatever amount. I've got Mom's inheritance, after all." "Oh, but just so you know, I'm not splitting any property with you." I took a moment to think. I had some savings of my own, which I didn't want Robert or his mistress to get their hands on. "Okay, I'll settle for the compensation. In return, we don't split my assets either." Robert burst out laughing at that.
"Your money isn't worth much anyway. I don't need it."
We signed the documents in the presence of lawyers, agreeing not to pursue a division of property but to settle on a compensation claim. I received $30,000, which seemed to be paid out in a lump sum from Karen's estate. He probably wanted to start his new life with his mistress as quickly as possible, resolving any messy ties with money. After the lawyer left, "I'm taking the house, the savings, and the retirement funds. You can go live in a home," Robert said. And so, I did end up moving into a facility. Not because Robert told me to, but because it seemed like a more enjoyable way to spend my retirement. The house was originally Robert's family home, and I had nowhere else to live. My sister and her husband were living in my family home, and I didn't want to impose on my son and his wife. I knew Robert had no savings, so dividing property would have been pointless. I preferred to get the divorce over with quickly and was confident I could make it on my own from now on. Robert was the heir to Karen's estate, and the compensation was enough for me. Months later, Robert showed up at the facility. Though I hadn't given him my current address. He wasn't supposed to know I had moved into the facility. He must have used some agency to find me. I wondered what he could possibly want after all this time. There were other residents at the facility. So I asked him to wait on the outdoor terrace. Seeing Robert sitting there, looking around, I felt a sense of pity. What had I ever seen in this man to marry him? It was a mystery even to myself. Sorry to keep you waiting. What do you want?
What's all this about?
Robert confronted me without a greeting, clearly shocked. I played dumb, knowing full well why he was surprised. Why are you here all of a sudden? How did you find me? It took me forever to track you down since you wouldn't contact me. You didn't tell our son either, did you? He had no idea. I didn't want to bother him, as he has his own family now. But that doesn't answer my question. How did you find out about this place? I hired a detective. When I mentioned I needed to contact you about the compensation, they found you. Having an ex-husband is quite handy. So, he had gone through an agency after all. Which detective agency was it? I was furious at the breach of privacy but kept my cool. More importantly, how can someone like you afford to stay in such a luxurious facility? That was what Robert was astonished about. After our divorce, I had moved into a high-end facility that we had once considered for our retirement. It wasn't your typical nursing home, but more of a luxury apartment complex with an attached hospital. There was also a dining hall run by a nutritionist, and I spent my days enjoying the company of other residents and helpers. You could be on your own if you wished, and someone would check on each room daily to ensure no one had fallen. Each room was equipped with an emergency call button for immediate assistance. I heard this place costs $1 million? How do you have that kind of money? Actually, I've been investing for the past 35 years, ever since we got married. I wanted to ensure we could enjoy our retirement together. I had been laid off during a recession and struggled to find a new job, which drained my savings and filled me with anxiety. Understanding the unpredictability of life, I realized that saving money wasn't enough and started learning about investments. I didn't want to seem greedy, so I never told Robert, whom I was dating at the time. I began investing modestly. After we got married, my desire for us to enjoy good food and travel in our retirement grew stronger, prompting me to invest more seriously. Since we both worked, I gradually invested my earnings, sacrificing outings with friends, delicious meals, shopping, and vacations, putting all my disposable income into investments. After 35 years of consistent investing, I amassed a significant fortune. Partly because I started right when the economy was down. When I shared this, Robert claimed, "Then that money is mine too." I had anticipated he would say something like that. "Sorry, but you have no claim to my money." "Why not? I'm your ex-husband, it should be part of my assets too." "You renounced any claim to my assets in front of our lawyers. Have you forgotten already?" "Damn, that's why you insisted on a lawyer. You tricked me." "Who's been deceiving whom all along?" Robert's face twisted in frustration. Realizing this conversation was a waste of time, I urged him to leave. "No way. I'm not leaving. I'll live here too." I was speechless with disbelief. Shortly after, a security guard arrived, prompted by another resident who noticed my distress, and escorted Robert out. Due to his harassing behavior, Robert was banned from the facility and added to the blacklist. Curious about his persistence, I contacted our son, who revealed that Robert was in debt. After our divorce, Robert planned to marry his mistress. However, she became furious upon learning about the compensation he paid me. To appease her, Robert lavished her with gifts. But she eventually left him for a younger man without marrying him.
Are you dumping me after all I've spent on you?
It was too late for regrets. The mistress had moved on, losing interest in a now penniless Robert. It turns out she was using Robert as a convenient source of money, likely having always preferred the younger man. I couldn't believe a woman 20 years younger would seriously consider marrying someone like Robert. It seems he was the only one who truly believed in his affair turning into marriage, which must have been a huge shock to him. After donating all of his inheritance to his mistress and accumulating debt, Robert ended up alone in a house that was over 70 years old. The house was in bad shape, with many parts broken and no money for repairs. He now lives alone in a leaky home. My son expressed no interest in helping him. Recently, a community worker visited, asking Robert to at least repair the exterior walls because it was affecting the neighboring house. Robert's angry outburst over this request led to a police incident. My son had to pick up his father from the police station, where he told Robert they were through.
You're abandoning me too?
Robert cried, clinging to his son, who shook him off. Discarded by his son, I thought how pitiful Robert was. After the incident with the police, he became a pariah in the neighborhood, spending his weekends indoors. After telling me about Robert's current situation, my son asked me to keep in touch occasionally. I was touched that he cared. Sometime after talking to my son, I received a call from Robert. Ignoring it, he then called the facility directly. Such persistence. The staff were worried for me. I decided to answer just once. I just need a little money. I refuse.
Don't you have a pension?
Robert was supposed to have recently retired, so his claim of having no money seemed like a lie. I didn't get anything.
Don't lie. You received a pension, didn't you? I got fired just before retirement because of the affair.
Turns out, Robert was fired just short of retirement. Apparently, his mistress was a co-worker. After breaking up, Robert's stalking scared her into reporting him to their employer. Ultimately, his affair was exposed, leading to his dismissal without a pension. His stalking and the resulting police involvement also became a problem. I felt no sympathy for his story. I asked the facility staff to call the police if he contacted again. When Robert realized he couldn't reach me by phone, he resorted to sending letters. The letter began with, "I want to see you again. I'm lonely." But towards the end, "I need some money." The content changed to things like that. I think he's struggling. There was a time I inadvertently laughed. I forgot which letter it was, but the ink was slightly smeared. It looked like it was from tears, but I suspect it was just water. I wondered what the point of such a performance was. Truly, it must be hard for him. The letters stopped after about a year when I didn't respond. Years passed, and I had completely forgotten about Robert. Then one day, while I was shopping, a man in dirty clothes, emitting a slight odor, approached me. It was undoubtedly Robert, now thin with almost entirely white hair and a bushy beard. "Isn't that Grace?" I was shocked by how much he had changed. "I've finally found you. Let's start over. You're all I have." Feeling frightened as Robert grabbed my hand, he insisted. "It's me, Robert. You recognize me, right?"
I do, but we are strangers now.
Goodbye. As I tried to leave, Robert blocked my path, looking at me with desperate eyes. Then suddenly begged, "Please, come back home. I don't want to be alone in my old age. You are the one who drove me away. Have you forgotten?"
I'm apologizing, aren't I?
Sorry isn't enough. I've moved on. You should too. Despite my attempts to ignore him, Robert kept chasing me, repeatedly bowing his head. "We're divorced, Robert. Stop this." I was wrong. You're the most important thing to me. I've realized that now. It's too late. As I tried to distance myself, Robert grabbed my arm. Then, could you let go of her, please?
Who are you?
This is my husband.
What?
I had remarried. My new husband's name is Matthew. 2 years my senior. We got close in the same facility where we met. It was Matthew who had called security when Robert visited. This was shared with me by another resident, and I was drawn to their considerate and kind nature. We naturally spent more time together and decided to marry. Despite wondering if it was odd to remarry at our age, we chose happiness for our final chapter. Matthew pulled Robert away from me.
You remarried?
Yes. So please leave me alone. So that's how it is. Robert was visibly shaken. I was worried he might lash out at Matthew in anger, but he had no energy left. Instead, he collapsed, crying on the spot. Please stop. It's embarrassing.
Shut up. Don't bother me.
Robert cried unabashedly, as onlookers watched from afar. I thought it was a pitiful sight. A grown man, crouched down on the street, crying. Is this something a person can do without shame? Or perhaps, am I being tested? Grace, let's go. Yes. Encouraged by Matthew, I left the scene behind. Since then, Robert has not appeared before me again. According to my son, Robert still lives in the same old, unrepaired house. Unable to properly take care of household chores and accumulating garbage to the point of generating complaints for the smell. My son has been inconvenienced by repeated contacts every time there's a complaint. Despite attempts to reason with him, my son finally lost his patience. In front of a city official, "He's not my son," Robert declared. Following that, attempts to contact my son ceased when Robert reacted angrily to them. It seems the authorities have also given up, deeming any effort futile. Truly, Robert has become a neighborhood nuisance. However, that's no longer my concern. Ultimately, abandoned by everyone, Robert lives in isolation. If only I hadn't started that affair, my son mentioned hearing Robert say. But to me, it's not about the affair. It's the price of living selfishly, without regard for others, now coming back to haunt him. It's his responsibility. Humans may be prone to making regrettable decisions, but continuing without reflection for over 70 years is merely pitiful. Robert will likely never realize this, having destroyed his own future. The task of repairing it falls to him, though he may lack the strength to do so. I hope he faces his actions and lives on. I'm thankful to Robert. Had I continued to rely on him, my later years would have been disastrous. His decision to divorce because of his affair allowed me to live my life. I've started to communicate more frequently with my son. It was a turning point when Emily, my son's wife, who mediated between us, said, "Please don't worry about it." That moment made me realize how much of my life was spent overly accommodating others. I had distanced myself from my adult son to avoid burdening him. Shocked when he expressed his dislike for his grandmother and father from childhood. Aware of the mistreatment and infidelity, I've resolved to live the rest of my life without such undue consideration. Now, my son's family and grandchildren visit, allowing us to make up for lost time in conversation. My son seems a bit shy, but it's strange how he can talk naturally when his wife and grandchildren are around. He has accepted Matthew, and to my grandchildren, Matthew is like a real grandfather. Currently, Matthew and I enjoy our time in the facility, surrounded by friends and content. My priority is health, hoping for a long life.
Grandma! This is Mia.
Kevin's girlfriend, Mia, seemingly quiet woman with fair skin, greeted us with a nervous smile. I quickly ushered them inside the house. It was for a meet and greet that Kevin had brought her over, and my daughter-in-law, Chloe, was in good spirits, eagerly asking how the two had met.
Evelyn, hurry up and serve them some coffee.
Chloe's mood had soured just minutes earlier. The reason was Kevin had first told his parents that Mia was pregnant. I was so shocked I lost my voice. Chloe showed some discomfort at the fact they were having a shotgun wedding.
We're serious about making this work. We know we're young, but please, allow us to marry.
Both were sincerely asking for their parents' permission to marry. As a grandmother, I realized it was not my place to comment and silently watched, moved by their demeanor. However, Chloe made a visibly displeased face and waved her hand in front of her own face.
A shotgun wedding is so tacky. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you have to marry, right? Isn't that right, Evelyn?
Suddenly turned to me.
What?
I let out, as Chloe directed a sardonic smile my way.
Yes, it's true. Just because there's a baby on the way doesn't necessarily mean marriage is a must.
Kevin looked momentarily saddened. I had anticipated such a reaction. But you two are choosing to move forward because of this baby. Whatever the case, it's something Kevin and Mia have decided together. No one else has the right to object. Maybe what we can do, Chloe, is to support them, don't you think?
Chloe downed her mug of coffee in one go.
Evelyn, get me a refill, please. She handed it over, then crossed her arms and sighed.
Well, opposing it is futile anyway. So, when are you planning the wedding? What? Oh, considering Mia's condition, we'd like to do it sooner rather than later. So, this means we're finally getting a break from parenting.
Chloe said reflectively, then turned towards me in the kitchen.
Now that we're going to be living as a family, we won't be needing a housekeeper anymore.
Can you leave?
What?
The sudden words from Chloe took everyone by surprise. My son Charles, Kevin, and Mia were all left speechless.
What am I supposed to do now?
My name is Evelyn. I'm a 70-year-old grandmother. I live with my only son Charles, his wife Chloe, and their family in a 2-generation home. Though it may seem happy from the outside, I've felt somewhat downcast since losing my husband a few years ago. Chloe, my son's wife, is outspoken and tends to say whatever comes to her mind, and while we're not on bad terms, I've felt her using me for convenience. When Chloe goes out with friends, she takes for granted that I'll do the household chores and even asks me to drive her to the station. Chloe seems to think living together in a 2-generation home is her way of showing filial piety. Contrary to my wish for a quiet life after my husband's death, I find myself entangled in a complicated situation.
Come on, get up already.
From the bedroom of my son and his wife, Chloe's almost shrieking voice can be heard. She seems to be in a bad mood again. Though Charles was working till late last night, he was woken up at the usual time on his day off and hurried to get ready to go out. I quietly spoke to Charles when I encountered him in the washroom. Charles, are you okay? I'm fine, got about 5 hours of sleep. Charles smiled gently at me through the mirror while drying his face with a towel. Lately, Charles has been looking pale, and I've been worried. Despite my concerns, Charles would brush it off with, "I'm fine," which was something my husband used to say. He kept working until one day, he suddenly collapsed and passed away. That memory is always with me, and I wish Charles could rest more on his days off. Loud footsteps approached. Chloe appears at the bathroom, frowning and visibly annoyed.
How long are you going to wash your face? Hurry up, I'll be late for my meeting with friends.
I'm sorry, I'll change right away. The meek Charles quickly left to change his clothes. Meanwhile, Chloe turned to me and handed over a note. Evelyn, this is the shopping list for today. Yes, I got it. Have fun with your friends. The weather seems nice today. Please wash the bed sheets as well. Chloe left without waiting for my reply. After watching her brazen departure, I sighed deeply. Even when my husband was alive, Chloe had always been bold in speaking her mind to us. In the beginning of our living together. Don't hold back. I had said to Chloe, but as time went on, her aggressive nature became more apparent. Cooking, which Chloe disliked, fell to me. If she disliked a dish, she would push the plate away saying, "I told you I can't eat this, didn't I?" Or she would complain about wrinkles in the laundry I had folded. Still, since she was chosen by my son Charles, I tried to keep a quiet smile and avoid causing trouble, but since my husband passed, Chloe's attitude has become more extreme, tiring my spirit.
Evelyn, you're staying home all day, right? Make sure the bath is ready for me when I get back.
Chloe said this without even looking at me as she left the house. Chloe goes out with her friends almost every week. Since the beginning of her marriage, she has seldom done housework or childcare, focusing more on her appearance and spending freely. She's very sociable, making acquaintances in various places. There were many instances that could have led to suspicions of infidelity when Chloe was younger, but Charles, she wouldn't do that. Trusted her without a doubt, so I didn't pursue it. I was surprised to see Charles, looking sleepy as he entered with his hands full of confectionery boxes upon returning from seeing off Chloe. "Oh, this? It's for Chloe's class reunion next week. She's planning to give them out."
Really? All of this?
Chloe doesn't want to be embarrassed. She keeps saying she doesn't want people to think we're living with our parents because we're struggling for money. I'm sorry, but just let her do as she pleases. Of course, it's all right, don't worry. Sitting in the chair, I felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. Eventually, I took the list Chloe had given me and went out for the shopping. My familiar shoes felt heavier than usual. Perhaps due to my age, I often feel a dull pain in my knees with every step. Yet, imagining Chloe's likely snide remarks about wasting gas, I gently stroked my knees, encouraging them to keep going. Returning home, sweating and carrying shopping bags in both hands. I set down the bags at the entrance and stretched my bent back when my grandson Kevin appeared. "Oh, Grandma, welcome back. No wonder you weren't home, you went out shopping." Kevin frowned slightly as he looked at the groceries I had bought. Kevin, the only son of Charles and Chloe, had become less visible around the house since starting his job last spring. Though we live together, he's often busy with work, coming home late and leaving early in the morning. And on his days off, he dresses up and goes out. It's rare for Kevin to be at home during the daytime on a weekend. Before I could even take off my shoes, Kevin took the shopping bags to the kitchen and began putting things away quickly. I glimpsed his expression and sensed a happy atmosphere.
Did something good happen?
Kevin smiled as he carefully placed eggs from a carton into the refrigerator.
Actually, there's someone I want to introduce to you. I'm thinking of bringing her home next week.
Introduce someone? As I processed what that meant, I realized my grandson had reached the age for such things. Introduce someone? Could it be what I'm thinking? It might be. Grandma, there's something I've been thinking about for a long time. Something you've been thinking about? Yes. I can't talk about it just yet, but I promise I will someday. But first, would you meet the person I want to introduce? Kevin spoke with excitement, and I couldn't help but smile. I was curious about what he had been thinking about, but more so about the kind of woman he would bring home. Growing up, Kevin had never brought a girlfriend home. His absence from home since starting his job, I realized, might have been due to dating. For the first time in a while, I forgot about the usual annoyances and hummed a tune while cleaning. Of course, I had informed Chloe and Charles about this matter, but Charles only muttered, "Marriage, huh?" while Chloe seemed unamused. On their next day off, Kevin brought the woman he wanted to introduce to our home. Chloe had asked me to clean up the front of the house, and while I was sprinkling water, I became a bit wary when an unfamiliar car stopped, but seeing my grandson waving from the driver's seat with a smile, I felt relieved. The car was a rental. Perhaps Kevin had gone to the trouble of renting a car to pick her up. I almost laughed inwardly, thinking Kevin must be quite smitten.
Grandma! This is Mia!
I couldn't help but smile at the sight of my grandson's happy face as he introduced the woman next to him. Kevin's girlfriend, Mia, seemingly quiet woman with fair skin, greeted us with a nervous smile. I quickly led the two inside. It was for a meet and greet that Kevin had brought her over, and Chloe, in a good mood, eagerly asked how the two had become acquainted. Chloe and Charles sat at a table set for 4, facing Kevin and Mia, while I prepared coffee for everyone in the kitchen.
Evelyn, hurry up and serve them some coffee!
Chloe's mood had turned sour just minutes before. The reason was that Kevin had first told his parents that Mia was pregnant. I was so shocked I lost my voice. The previously warm atmosphere froze in an instant, with Kevin showing a seriousness which he usually does not. Chloe displayed some discomfort at the fact they were having a shotgun wedding.
We're serious about making this work. We might be young, but please, allow us to marry.
Both were earnestly asking their parents' permission to marry. As a grandmother, I realized it was not my place to comment and silently watched, moved by their demeanor. Watching Kevin plead before his parents, I felt tears welling up. Of course, we support your marriage. For the baby's sake, it's better to marry soon and settle down mentally.
Thanks, Dad,
Kevin said with a smile, looking at Mia. Chloe made a visibly displeased face and waved her hand in front of her own face.
Shotgun weddings are so tacky. Can you even explain how this happened, Mia?
Taken aback by such an unexpected question, Mia was surprised.
What?
And looked down at the table. Kevin quickly placed his hand on her shoulder. Times have changed, this kind of marriage isn't unusual anymore. Besides, we have our own ways of thinking and are ready to work hard.
Kevin, you offered to marry because Mia got pregnant, didn't you? Are you sure this is a well-thought-out decision? Our relationship was serious from the start, aiming for marriage. It just happened that the baby gave us a good opportunity. Just because there's a baby doesn't mean you have to marry, right? Isn't that right, Evelyn?
Chloe suddenly turned to me.
What?
I let out, as Chloe directed a sardonic smile my way. Recalling a TV segment on single mothers we watched as a family recently, indeed. Having a baby doesn't necessarily lead to marriage, but this situation seemed different. Yes, it's true.
Just because there's a baby on the way doesn't mean marriage is a must.
Kevin looked momentarily saddened. I had anticipated such a reaction. So, I had prepared my next words carefully, thinking I'd proudly tell Kevin about it later. But, you two are choosing to move forward because of this baby. Whatever the case, it's a decision made by Kevin and Mia together. No one else has the right to object. Maybe what we can do, Chloe, is to support them, don't you think?
An old person making irresponsible statements.
What would she say next? Everyone probably wondered, but Chloe downed her mug of coffee in one go.
Evelyn, get me a refill, please.
She handed it over, then crossed her arms and sighed.
Well, opposing it is futile anyway. So, when are you planning the wedding? What? Oh, considering Mia's condition, we'd like to do it sooner rather than later.
So, this means we're finally getting a break from parenting, Chloe said wistfully, then turned to face me, who was standing in the kitchen. Since the family will be living together from now on, can we ask you, the no longer needed housekeeper, to leave?
What?
My son is getting married, and we want to live with just our cherished family from now on. Charles, taken aback by Chloe's sudden words, and both Kevin and Mia were left speechless in shock.
Once Kevin's child is born, they'll likely live here for a while, right? We don't want to trouble you with the baby's night crying.
No, I'm fine with that. If there's anything I can do.
I can't think of any advantage to living with someone who's likely to become a care-dependent elderly. You're no longer needed, so could you please leave?
Feeling as if my heart was being torn out, I didn't want to worry Kevin and the others, so
You're absolutely right.
Tried to smile bravely. At that time, I didn't take Chloe's words seriously. But day by day, Chloe's efforts to drive me out of the house became more blatant. Please leave as soon as possible. She kept on saying so. When I consulted with Charles, the timid man could only hold his head and stay silent. What was especially shocking was the realization that Chloe was almost entirely in control of the inheritance from my husband, including the house. My husband, being a man of small desires, had left everything to our son Charles with the intention that all his property would be passed on to him. Effectively, I had no assets or property of my own. And since Charles was under Chloe's thumb, I was stunned to find myself stripped of both my home and inheritance.
What should I do now?
I murmured while looking through old albums of my late husband and I in the middle of the night. He was always gentle, never angry, just calm. Was it his nature that allowed Chloe to become so selfish? If so, I felt like the cause was both my husband and myself. Months passed. Despite the daily harassment from Chloe, unable to leave, I lived enduring it all. One day, while I was taking a shower, the water suddenly turned cold. I worried it was broken, but it seemed Chloe had turned off the water heater's power. Thinking she probably didn't know I was in the bath, I turned the power back on, but it was immediately turned off again. Realizing it was harassment.
Could you not turn off the power while I'm bathing?
I asked.
It's a waste of electricity.
Only to be shouted at. There were even times in the dead of winter when I had to rinse off with cold water. Exhausted, I consulted Charles.
Could you bathe while Chloe is out?
But he could only weakly suggest. Wondering how he became so spineless, I sighed in disbelief. Even as Chloe said with a snide smile every time we met.
Please rent an apartment and live there as soon as possible.
I was powerless to do anything. Amidst these oppressive days, a piece of bright news was brought in. Mia had finally given birth to a healthy baby. For a moment, Chloe and I celebrated wholeheartedly, tears in our eyes as we laughed together.
Now, if only you'd leave the house quickly, I'd truly be happy.
Chloe's smile suddenly turned cold as she spoke to me. I doubted the woman's character before me. Charles looked away, pretending to be engrossed in the newspaper, as if he had nothing to do with it. Though Chloe was the one who strongly wished for Kevin and his wife to stay at our home, she wanted nothing to do with the baby's care. I did everything I could to help Mia, who always deeply thanked me despite being overwhelmed with caring for the baby. Thank you so much for everything. Don't worry about it. You're going through the hardest time right now, and if there's anything I can do to help, I will. That was a heartfelt sentiment from me. After a particularly busy few months, Kevin suddenly said to me, I have something important to tell you. I'm listening. I responded while preparing dinner in the kitchen. Without stopping my chopping, I waited for Kevin to speak. Grandma, I want to talk to you alone. There's a place I want you to come to this Sunday. Let's keep it a secret from Mom and Dad. My hand holding the knife stopped. A secret from Chloe. When I looked at Kevin, he had a subtle smile as if trying to hide his joy. It was a look he often had as a child when he was plotting something secretly to make me happy. Kevin had always been close to me and my late husband since he was little. Looking back, maybe Chloe felt that her only son's affections were being stolen by me and my husband. That wouldn't have been fun for Chloe. Probably that feeling continues, and Kevin realized that when I'm with Chloe, I feel intimidated and can't speak my mind. I felt dearly loved by my kind grandson and his wife. Next Sunday, Kevin, Mia, and the baby led me to a newly built apartment, about a 10-minute walk from our house. Kevin shared that he had purchased this apartment before the baby was born as we walked. I was deeply surprised by his decisiveness to buy it without consulting Chloe, who had strongly suggested living together. Sorry for making you walk, Grandma.
I need to strengthen my legs anyway. This distance is nothing.
I lightly tapped my thin legs. Though just a 10-minute walk made my knees ache, I resolved not to mention it. The new apartment room was furnished simply, with boxes in the corner. Presumably belonging to Mia, who used to live alone before she got married. Kevin, familiar with the place, started making coffee in the kitchen, while Mia was putting the baby to sleep in another room. So, there's something I wanted to ask you. Kevin began speaking seriously after a brief pause. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed unusually loud.
Would you live with us?
I was so surprised by the sudden proposal that I nearly dropped my mug. Kevin looked at me earnestly. Thinking it was a joke, I returned a strange smile, and Kevin looked away distantly.
Ever since I was a child, I couldn't stand seeing Mom treating you so badly.
Well, your mom has a bit of a strong personality, but...
You're always being told to leave the house, aren't you? Dad won't talk back, and I can't stand to see you being treated so poorly by Mom anymore.
What are you talking about? I'm being treated fine.
Remember when I said I had someone I wanted to introduce to you? I've been thinking about something for a long time.
I vaguely remembered such a conversation. It was a while ago, but I distinctly remembered Kevin speaking with an implication of determination when he talked about getting married.
I've been cherished by you and Grandpa since I was little, and I loved both of you. But somehow, I felt Mom was very rude towards you too. I've always watched the two of you and thought that when I grew up, I wanted to help. Kevin, did you really think that way?
Kevin leaned forward decisively, looking into my eyes.
Let's live together. There's no need for you to suffer alone in that house.
Unable to respond, Mia quietly returned and sat next to Kevin. Mia seemed to have listened to the conversation from the next room and looked at me solemnly, understanding the context. Kevin told me about it. Would it be possible for you to live with us? That's a very kind offer. I'm truly happy. But I don't want to intrude on your newlywed life. That's not a problem at all. We need your help as an experienced parent, and it would be reassuring to have you live with us. And apparently, Mia had also been subjected to Chloe's harassment, feeling disgusted with her. Mia had been scorned for having a shotgun wedding and had been yelled at to quiet the baby during night crying. Initially, Mia had wanted to move back to her parents' house after giving birth, but...
So you hate being with me, I understand.
Chloe would say so every time, and Mia was tired of explaining.
We're asking you. Please, would you live with us?
Kevin and Mia pleaded together. Silently watching them, I felt tears streaming down my face.
Thank you.
At that moment, no other words came to mind. Thus, it was decided that I would live with Kevin and his family. Of course, This news would soon reach Chloe's ears. As soon as I agreed to move in, Kevin apparently contacted Chloe and Charles. This was something I had asked Kevin to do. I was certain Chloe would strongly oppose to it. Telling myself this was my final battle, I left Kevin and his family at the apartment and headed home, opening the front door. As soon as I returned, Chloe summoned me to the living room and began yelling at me furiously.
What do you mean you're going to live with Kevin? You're joking, right?
No.
I'm grateful for Kevin's offer and I've decided to accept it. You're kidding, right?
Chloe scoffed. Beside her, Charles frowned, his face troubled.
Moving in with a newlywed couple? That doesn't sound sane. It's obvious you'll be a burden to Kevin.
I was worried about that too. But both of them have accepted me. I want to honestly accept their feelings.
How could this be happening? You say something too, will you?
Until then, Charles had been silent, now staring at Chloe with a vacant look in his eyes. His gaze was powerless, his body seemed to slump. Chloe, I want a divorce.
What? What is it with you all of a sudden?
I can't take this life anymore. Charles, usually quiet, raised his voice, causing Chloe to step back in surprise. He stood up, confronted Chloe directly, and glared at her with intense eyes.
I can't continue with you. Not just your attitude towards me, but what you've done to Mom all this time, I could never forgive. What the heck? You're not used to getting angry, don't start now. The problem here right now is about Evelyn living with Kevin, isn't it? Mom is going to live with Kevin. That's the end of that discussion. Now, it's about you and me. I can't live with you anymore. Why is this suddenly coming up? I've been tolerating your attitude because Mom put up with it. But if Mom's moving out to live with Kevin, that's a different story. Now it's about you and me. I want to divorce you for all the suspicious acts and alleged affairs since we were young. I haven't done anything like that.
Chloe, unusually flustered, looked away, her eyes darting around. Charles was gentle, but when he got angry as a child, he was unstoppable. Probably, Chloe had never seen Charles angry. When he did get angry, he would meticulously prepare to thoroughly defeat his opponent. As expected, Charles casually pulled out a large brown envelope from his company bag and spread its contents messily on the table. It was a report from an infidelity investigation conducted years ago, proving Chloe's affair without needing to read the details. Chloe was speechless and slumped into her seat. Without another word, Charles returned to his room. I noticed the living room curtains fluttering. So, the window was open. Feeling the gentle breeze coming through the window, I wondered if our embarrassing conversation had been overheard by the neighbors and massaged my temples. Chloe, I can't say anything about you and Charles, but I hope you two can talk it through properly. Chloe just sat there silently, not answering. Then, it came to a lawsuit because Chloe refused to divorce, but the investigation into the affair was the final blow, and the divorce was finalized. I heard rumors that Chloe didn't change her aggressive self even after the divorce, and people gradually distanced themselves from her, leading her to live lonely days. By the time the divorce was finalized, I had already been living with Kevin and the others for 6 months now. I was feeling happy every day, helping with the care of my great-grandchild. Then one day,
Grandma, Dad's here.
Returning from a walk with my great-grandchild, Charles was sitting in the apartment living room with a serious expression on his face. Seeing my son's face for the first time in 6 months since I left the house, he seemed somewhat healthier. After laying down the great-grandchild I was holding to bed, I smiled at Charles. Have you been able to sleep since the divorce?
Thanks to you, I've been getting about 8 hours.
Charles said this with a brighter expression than I had ever seen before. That's right. My son was someone who used to show such innocent smiles. Even though he has aged and grown a beard, I couldn't help but reminisce about his youthful appearance and laugh bitterly at the comparison to his present self.
So, what brings you here today? Don't tell me you want to live with us?
Ah, well, that's actually why I came. Of course, I'll contribute to the new home expenses as well.
Of course. You're now able to properly manage your finances after the divorce.
I've already settled things with Kevin and Mia. We're thinking of purchasing this apartment with the inheritance left by Dad, who passed away, in a way that the two of them would agree with. And from now on, I'll be able to protect you, Mom. Originally, Charles was timid by nature but never was a weak man. I'm sure it was the result of him carefully considering his future and taking action after the divorce from Chloe. I looked at my son, my grandson, Mia, and my great-grandchild in turn and closed my eyes. The image of my late husband appeared behind my eyelids. With a peaceful expression.
Isn't that wonderful?
It seemed like my late husband was smiling. What's so wonderful about it? You've put me through so much trouble. If you had lived a little longer, maybe I would have been happier. Thinking this, I then reconsidered. My current happiness is thanks to Kevin and Mia, who wished for my happiness. My gratitude towards these two cannot be fully expressed in words. Suddenly, my great-grandchild started crying as if a fire had been lit, and I quickly rushed to the bed and picked him up. After rocking him a few times, my great-grandchild fell completely at ease in my arms and started breathing softly in sleep.
You're nothing but a useless parasite. Get out of your parents' house now.
As I was moving down the hallway in my wheelchair, I was suddenly confronted by my brother's wife, Angela. Thinking it was just her usual harassment, I pretended not to hear. But then, she stood in front of me, blocking my way. Next thing I knew, I felt like I was floating, followed by a jolt of pain.
Ouch!
Angela had suddenly pushed me and my wheelchair to the floor. I felt a sharp pain in my arm and ended up crawling on the floor. Then, with a pleased smile, she kicked my wheelchair out of my reach.
Why are you doing this to me? You're in the way. I'm not giving back your wheelchair until you agree to leave your parents' house.
Angela always looked down on me, treating me horribly without remorse. At that moment, I realized I could never understand her and decided to leave the house I had grown up in.
Now this big house and all its wealth are mine.
Angela's face lit up with a devilish grin, delighted by the situation. At that moment, I vowed revenge against the truly terrifying Angela, who seemed willing to do anything for her own desires. I am Margaret, 33 years old. 3 years ago, on a rainy day, I fell down the stairs at the station. The fall caused a spinal injury, leaving me paraplegic, dependent on my wheelchair. When I first realized I couldn't move my legs, I cried tears of frustration. But now, I've accepted my reality and have adapted to work from home, doing what I can. I've always lived in my parents' house, which was remodeled 2 years ago to be wheelchair accessible. Being self-conscious, I mostly stay indoors. In my family home, I also live with my brother Kevin and his wife Angela, who married a year ago. Angela, my brother's wife, is 3 years older than me. I was initially excited to have Angela like a real sister, but that was a big mistake. The day Angela moved in, after unpacking, she smiled at me sweetly and asked in a gentle voice,
Now that we're living together, I'd love to have a heart-to-heart in your room to get along better, Margaret.
I'd love that. I really want to be friends with you, Angela. With high hopes for a pleasant future, I entered my room with Angela pushing my wheelchair. But as soon as the door closed, her kind expression vanished. She frowned like a different person and said something shocking. You know, you're an eyesore. Excuse me.
Are your ears as bad as your legs? Your presence in that wheelchair is an eyesore.
I was stunned by Angela's drastic change and managed a weak, uncertain smile, saying, "You're joking, right?" To which she berated me even more.
I hate jokes. Everything I said is my honest opinion. But you just said you wanted to get along.
That was just an excuse to be alone with you. Hearing this unexpected statement, my mind went into a panic, and my hand, covering my mouth, started trembling. Wait a minute. I can't comprehend this. Does she hate me? As I took a deep breath trying to understand what was said, she hurled more insults at me. People who live leisurely at home without working are called parasites. Why are you being so harsh? Did you come to my room just to say these things? Yes. I feel sick having someone who only consumes money living in this house. I never imagined she could be this kind of person. My mind was still in turmoil, but I knew I had to respond. Looking her in the eye, I said, "I am working and paying for my living expenses."
Don't lie. How can you work while staying at home? Are you stupid?
I explained that I work from home, but she didn't believe me at all. Instead, she demanded that I, a useless freeloader, leave the house. I was shocked by such harsh words from her, whom I had only met a few times since my brother's marriage. Confused and unsure what to do, she said, "I can't stand even breathing the same air as you," and left the room. Alone, I kept replaying her words in my head. Should I tell my brother? As I was about to open my door, I remembered my past self. After falling down the stairs and losing consciousness, I awoke in the hospital to find my legs immobile. At that time, I couldn't accept this new reality immediately. Though I claimed to live facing forward, in reality, I hardly left my home, conscious of other people's eyes. Maybe Angela is in a similar situation. Instead of upsetting everyone by telling my parents and brother, I decided to wait and see. Surely, if we live together, we'll understand each other eventually. With that thought, I calmed my shaking heart. I tried to act cheerful around Angela, initiating conversations to get along better. But her cruel behavior only worsened day by day. She played the kind sister when our parents and brother were around, but as soon as they left for work, her harassment began. "You don't work or pay, so you don't have the right to eat." One day, she threw away my lunch as soon as I sat down at the dining table. "I've told you before, I do work, and I contribute to the food expenses. I have the right to eat.
If you lie too much, your nose will grow like Pinocchio's."
No matter how much I explained, Angela wouldn't listen. She insulted me and intentionally blocked my room door with objects to trap me inside. Unable to endure anymore, I told my parents and brother when they returned from work. I started talking when Angira is around, making sure she couldn't deny it.
"I'm having trouble because Angela threw away my food and trapped me in my room."
That's not true. She said she didn't like what I made and threw it away. I was cleaning and accidentally left the vacuum cleaner in front of Margaret's room. I'm sorry for not being useful. Margaret, I'm sorry for making you feel bad. Angela acted like an actress, tearfully apologizing to me, and my parents and brother were completely deceived. I couldn't win against this. I started thinking that it would be better not to engage with her. After that, I hardly talked and spent more time in my room. One day, a year later, as I was returning to my room after breakfast, she started yelling at me in the hallway.
"Still planning to stay in your parents' house? You're so persistent. I'm sick of this pest. You useless parasite, get out now."
Being used to her harassment, I pretended not to hear. But then she stood in front of me, blocking my path. "Please move aside." As I tried to push past, Angela laughed and forcefully kicked the side of my wheelchair. I was hit by a severe impact and toppled over before I could steady myself. A sharp pain shot through my arm. I tried to get up, but I couldn't right my wheelchair lying on its side. Crawling on the floor in pain and humiliation, I looked up to see she standing over me, looking smug. Desperately looking up, I saw her trying to suppress a laugh, her arms crossed, clearly enjoying the situation. "How pathetic you look. What a spectacle.
Please, help me.
Well, if I must.
There.
She kicked my wheelchair even further away, putting it out of my reach.
Don't you think this is too much? I have to do this to get rid of a parasite, don't I? Give me back my wheelchair now.
Not until you say you're leaving this house. So, what will it be? Looking down on me and acting so cruelly with ease, I realized I could never understand her. I decided to leave the home I'd grown up in.
Fine. I'll move to a high-rise condominium.
A high-rise condominium? As if you could afford that. Your denial is just sad. I don't care if you don't believe me. I'm leaving. Please return my wheelchair. Just wait for the caretaker who's due soon. I'm finally getting rid of the nuisance. Now this big house and all its wealth will be mine. Get on your precious wheelchair and start packing. That's when I realized her true nature. She would go this far for her own desires. Such a terrifying person. She looked like nothing but a devil to me, leaving me on the floor without returning my wheelchair, and then leaving the house. The floor was cold. And I was getting colder. I need to do something. Lying in the hallway in the middle of winter, my body temperature dropped rapidly. I tried to crawl to my wheelchair, but my injured arm was too weak to move. What if I stay like this? Shivering from the cold, I heard the front door open, and the caretaker arrived.
Help me, please!
Hearing my cry, the caretaker rushed over in a panic. Rubbing my injured arm unconsciously, the caretaker noticed something was wrong and immediately took me to the hospital. Luckily, there were no fractures, just bruises, so I was prescribed some ointment. Back at home, filled with frustration, I started preparing to move. I won't let this go. I'll show everyone her true nature. And so, the day of my move arrived. Angela had finished breakfast and was getting ready to leave. Hurrying to the entrance, she said to me, "Make sure you clean up and leave before I come back. And never return to this house. Don't worry. I'll leave without leaving a trace. Then goodbye. Forever." She left in unusually high spirits, her voice lively. I wonder what face she'd make if she knew the tragedy about to befall her. Get ready, my plan is almost complete. Despite saying this, it was hard to leave my cherished home. I said my farewells, touching the pillars and walls for the last time. Goodbye, my dear home. Thank you for everything. As the moving truck drove away, I watched the house disappear from view with a sense of longing. And true to my word to Angela, I moved into the top floor of a high-rise condominium. Watching the outside view, evening came before I knew it. The setting sun peeked through the buildings, illuminating my face. So beautiful. I can see this every day from now. Despite everything, I was filled with hope for my new life when my mobile phone rang. Seeing Angela's name on the screen, I calmly answered the call.
What's going on? The house is empty.
I've moved out, as you can see. I'm busy, so I'm hanging up now.
Wait. Who gave you permission to do this? There's no TV, no air conditioner.
I bought everything in the house, so no permission was needed.
What? Don't be ridiculous. Return everything.
I won't give back what's mine. By the way, I paid for the house's renovation and utilities. I should be asking you for money.
What? You're kidding, right?
I'm serious, as you hate jokes. And yes, I moved to a high-rise condominium. The view from the top floor is amazing. I took the opportunity to tell her the truth she never listened to. Did you realize you were bullying someone who provided you food and shelter?
That's impossible. I never took anything from you. How did a homebody like you make money?
I'm a stock trader.
That's a transparent lie.
I worked for the securities company before my accident. Trading stocks is easy for me. I have $3 million in savings now.
Wait. Are you saying you, not your parents, are the wealthy one?
Yes. I let my parents and Kevin save their earnings for retirement.
What? I married into the family thinking they were rich.
Angela's true intentions spilled out. I knew it but had to ask, and she confirmed my suspicions.
Didn't you love Kevin? Love doesn't fill the stomach. I thought you were rich after seeing the big house. I was so fooled.
You misunderstood on your own. By the way, I invest in properties too. I own several apartments besides this condo. The wealthy and victorious one is me. You misjudged, sadly.
What? I won't forgive you.
Make a fuss if you want. You should worry about yourself.
Why?
I've put that house up for sale.
We're still living there. That's terrible.
My parents and Kevin moved with me, so you're left alone. Oh, and Kevin has blocked your calls and emails.
What?
I almost laughed at her loud and shocked reaction. She frantically tried to contact Kevin, but of course, got no response. I revealed more truths she didn't know. I owe it to you, Angela, for pushing me in the wheelchair and causing my injury. Thank you.
What?
The caretakers saw everything and told my family, so they helped me. Actually, we had secretly planned to move out without you. Moreover, my brother prepared something to definitely trap you. Remember last night when Kevin suggested you go out today to make moving easier? That was to clear the house before you knew it. She was silent for a moment, then suddenly changed her tone, trying to sound sweet. Margaret, I think I went a little too far. Let's be close from now on. Okay? Telling such lies will make your nose grow like Pinocchio's. I wish we could be real sisters, Margaret. I can't stand this nonsense. By the way, this whole conversation is on speaker, and my family is listening. No one will forgive you. Kevin is divorcing you, so please live well on your own. She, realizing she couldn't persuade me, made a last-ditch effort.
Kevin, can you hear me? You're joking about the divorce, right?
He doesn't seem interested in responding. He's laughing and enjoying your desperate situation.
Shut up. Let's talk properly. I'll find your condo and come right now. Tell me where. Please.
Everyone burst into laughter at her, thinking she could still be forgiven. But knowing her, she might try to find our new home, so I sternly warned her. If you force your way into the condo, I'll sue you for trespassing.
Don't say such scary things.
I'm serious. And about the injury and mental distress you caused, I'll sue for compensation. I have the hospital reports, so you can't escape. Pay $20,000.
I'll be broke. You don't need the money, you're rich.
I'm asking for compensation to make you reflect. If you don't agree, talk to my lawyer. Goodbye forever.
I don't care about poor Kevin, but I don't want to lose wealthy you. I apologize. Please forgive me.
No way, you fool. I hung up forcefully. I gave Angela's photo to the condo's doorman, warning him about her, so security will respond if she steps foot inside. My brother, not wanting to see Angela's face anymore, had a lawyer I know finalize the divorce. Angela, who squandered my brother's earnings, only got $2,000 in the property settlement. She was living in the house we put up for sale, but the real estate buyer found her and she was fined for trespassing. Angela, now a criminal, is shunned even by her family and is lost without a home. I demanded the promised $20,000 in compensation. We will make sure she pays. Our family is living spaciously in a new high-rise condo, enjoying every day. Although I liked my big detached house, the view from the expansive windows, unobstructed by my wheelchair, is refreshing. The city lights at night bring a new joy.